Desire behind the corset. How Victorian women hid longing. Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to a time of gaslight and shadows, a world of stiff collars and even stiffer rules. Imagine yourself standing in a dimly lit room, the air tasting of coal smoke and damp wool as you prepare to face the day. But your preparation isn't about choosing an outfit so much as building a cage around your own body, a beautiful, intricate cage of whalebone and steel. We're exploring the secret world of Victorian women and the quiet, desperate ways they expressed a universe of longing from behind the unyielding bars of their corsets. Honestly, given what they went through just to get dressed, you probably wouldn't survive until breakfast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not a bitter, biting cold, but a persistent, seeping dampness that lives in the bones of the house. It clings to the heavy velvet curtains and rises from the floorboards, a constant reminder that the sun hasn't yet bothered to climb over the slate rooftops of the city. You are awake before you're made, before the clatter of coal being delivered in the street below, in that quiet, grey hour that belongs only to you. You lie still under the weight of a half-dozen blankets, your body soft and undefined in the loose cotton of your nightgown. This is the only time of day you can take a truly deep breath, filling your lungs all the way to the bottom, feeling your belly rise and your ribs expand outwards without restriction. You cherish it. This breath is an act of quiet rebellion, a stolen moment of freedom. But the light is growing, turning the black window pane into a hazy, bruised purple. The day is coming, and with it the performance. Slowly you push back the covers. The air bites at your bare arms as you swing your feet over the side of the bed, your toes curling against the cold, polished wood of the floor. You pad over to the washstand, pouring frigid water from a heavy ceramic pitcher into the matching bowl. The shock of it on your face is brutal, but it does the job. You are awake. You are ready. And there it is, waiting for you. It's draped over the back of a chair, almost like a sleeping creature. Your corset. It doesn't look like much in the gloom, a pale, stiffly shaped item, innocuous really. But you know better. This is not merely an undergarment. This is your skeleton for the day the architecture upon which your entire identity as a lady will be built. You run a hand over the fabric. It's a dense, unyielding cotton called coutil, specifically designed to withstand incredible strain without ripping or warping. It feels less like cloth and more like thin canvas. Stitched into its many vertical channels are the bones of the beast, long, flexible strips of baleen, which most people called whalebone, harvested from the mouths of the great sea creatures hunted miles and oceans away. Near the front and along the back where the laces pull tightest, there are also thin strips of steel for extra rigidity. It is a masterpiece of engineering, designed for one purpose: to reshape the female form into something it was never meant to be. Your maid, a young girl named Mary, whose hands are always rough and red from lye soap, enters with a quiet knock. She doesn't speak, not yet. The morning ritual is a silent understanding. She helps you out of your nightdress and into your chemise, a thin cotton shift that will serve as a barrier between your skin and the corset. It's a flimsy defense, but a necessary one. You've seen the chafing and sores that can develop without it. You stand straight, hands resting on the dressing table for balance, and hold your breath. Mary wraps the corset around your middle. It feels cool against your back. She fastens the front clasps first. They are a series of metal hooks and studs called a busk, running down the center of your torso from your chest to below your navel. With a series of dull clicks, the front is sealed. You are now loosely enclosed. The real work is about to begin. You turn around, presenting your back to her. This is where the power of the device truly lies. The long, crisscrossing laces threaded through a series of tiny, reinforced eyelets. Mary takes the two ends of the lace in her hands. "Ready, ma'am?" she asks, her voice a soft murmur. You nod, bracing yourself. She begins to pull. The pressure starts as a firm hug, a comforting embrace, but it quickly intensifies. You exhale, trying to make your waist as small as possible. The corset tightens, cinching you in, compressing your ribs until they feel like they might overlap. You can feel your own organs shifting, a strange and unpleasant internal rearrangement pushed up and down to make way for this new artificial waistline. It's a sensation you've felt every day for years, but one you never quite get used to. It's the daily surrender. A mainstream historical fact often lost in the more dramatic tales of fainting is that for most women, the goal wasn't a cartoonishly tiny waist, but rather the creation of a smooth, rigid torso. It was about posture and providing a solid foundation for the heavy skirts and elaborate bodices that would be layered on top. It made you stand up straight whether you wanted to or not. "A little more, Mary," you say, your voice already sounding a bit strained. This is the part that feels like a contest with yourself. A smaller waist means the dress will fit better. The line will be more elegant, your presentation to the world more perfect. It's a strange sort of vanity, wanting to be more tightly confined. It feels like a punchline from the future, spending a fortune on a device that makes it harder to breathe, all for fashion. You can almost imagine someone a century from now complaining about their jeans feeling a bit snug after a big lunch and thinking they understand the struggle. They don't. Not even close. Mary puts her foot on the small of your back for leverage, a common technique, and gives the laces a final firm tug. You let out a short, sharp gasp as the last bit of air is squeezed from your lungs. The laces are swiftly, expertly tied into a secure bow. It's done. The transformation is immediate. Your posture is ramrod straight, your shoulders are thrown back, and your chest is pushed forward and up. You can no longer slouch. You can no longer bend at the waist. To pick something up, you'll have to perform a graceful full-body dip, a lady's curtsy to the floor. You take a breath, or rather you attempt to. Your breathing is now shallow, restricted to the very top of your lungs. A full deep belly breath is impossible. You will live the rest of your day on these short, bird-like sips of air. You turn to face the long mirror. The reflection shows the success of the ritual. Your waist is neatly and dramatically cinched, creating the fashionable hourglass silhouette. Below the waist, your hips curve out, and above your bosom is presented on what amounts to a shelf. You are the perfect shape. You are a lady, but you feel the rigid pressure around your torso, the unyielding grip of the whalebone and steel. It's a constant, dull ache that you will carry with you until you are undressed again tonight. Here's a quirky little tidbit for you. The front steel busk, that central spine of your corset, wasn't always just a simple, straight piece of metal. Some were designed with a distinct curve at the bottom called a spoon busk. This spoon shape was meant to conform to the abdomen, supposedly reducing the intense pressure on the internal organs. Husbands would sometimes give these as gifts, and some women would have them secretly engraved with initials or tiny sentimental poems, a hidden message held right against the body, a secret kept under layers of intense pressure. It's a strangely romantic detail for what is essentially a piece of human scaffolding. As you stand there observing your newly sculpted form, you contemplate the strange duality of your existence. Historians still argue whether women viewed the corset primarily as a tool of patriarchal oppression or as a fashionable, empowering status symbol. And the truth is, standing here in the cold morning light, you feel it is somehow both. You feel constrained, yes, but you also feel prepared, armored. The corset is a physical representation of the rigid social rules that bind you, but it's also the uniform that allows you to navigate your world with grace and command a certain kind of respect. It announces your status, your refinement, your discipline. It hurts, but it also empowers. It is your cage, but it is also your shield. Mary now begins to layer your petticoats, the cage crinoline, and finally the heavy wool of your day dress over this foundation. With each layer, you become less of a person and more of a figure, a walking sculpture. The real you, the soft, breathing body that woke up in the warm bed, is now buried deep inside. The woman who will descend the stairs to greet her family for breakfast is a careful construction, a perfect illusion. Her posture will be flawless, not because she is poised, but because she cannot be otherwise. It's a bit of a life hack, really. You'll always look attentive in a boring conversation because leaning back to zone out is simply not an option. You take one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back at you is elegant, composed, and perfectly shaped. Her expression is serene. She does not show the slightest hint of the physical restriction she feels, of the shallow breath she takes, of the constant dull pressure against her ribs. She is ready for the day. Her armor is in place. And underneath it, where no one can see the longing for a deep, easy breath, is the first secret she will keep today. There will be many, many more. You place your hand on the cool, polished wood of the banister, a necessary point of stability. The descent begins. Each step is a careful negotiation between the rigid column of your torso and the wide bell of your crinoline cage. You have to move with a strange, gliding motion, your feet finding the edge of each stair almost by memory, as looking down directly is an exercise in futility. The rustle of your petticoats and the faint creak of the whalebone are the only sounds that accompany your slow, deliberate progress. This is the first test of the day, navigating your own home as if it were an obstacle course. With your armor in place, nothing is simple anymore. You enter the breakfast parlor. The air is warm and thick with the comforting scents of fried bacon, toasted bread, and strongly brewed tea. A fire crackles in the hearth, casting a dancing, cheerful light on the silver teapot and the pristine white china. Your father is already seated at the head of the table, hidden behind the formidable wall of his morning newspaper, The Times. Your mother is at the other end, her back as straight as your own, observing the silent, efficient movements of the maid pouring the tea. The scene is one of perfect domestic tranquility, a painting brought to life. And you are the final essential figure in the composition. You take your seat, your movements, economical and precise. You can't simply slide into the chair. You must approach, turn, and lower yourself vertically, the cage of your skirts settling around you like a collapsing tent. It's a move you've perfected over thousands of breakfasts, a piece of silent choreography. Good morning, Papa. Good morning, Mama. Your voice is light, pleasant, the ideal daughter's voice. Your father grunts an acknowledgement from behind his paper. Your mother gives you a small, approving nod. Your posture is correct. Your appearance is satisfactory. The performance has begun. And this performance is for an audience that is everywhere and nowhere at once. It's for your family, for your neighbors, for the shopkeepers you might pass on the street, and for the faceless, powerful entity known as society. The shape you have so painfully created this morning is not for yourself. It is a tribute to an ideal you see reflected everywhere. You see it in the fashion plates of the ladies' magazines your mother subscribes to, like Godey's Ladies Book or the English Woman's Domestic magazine. In their pages, women are drawn not as people of flesh and blood, but as ethereal creatures with impossibly small waists, sloping shoulders, and delicate swan-like necks. Their bodies curve and flow in ways that defy anatomical possibility. They are illustrations of a dream. That dream is the hourglass figure. A tiny waist is the focal point, the absolute epicenter of female beauty. It is meant to signify delicacy, refinement, and most importantly, that you are a lady of leisure. A body this restricted cannot perform manual labor. It cannot haul water, scrub floors, or work a factory loom. Therefore, your tiny waist is a walking, breathing, or rather shallowly breathing advertisement for your family's social standing. It says, "This woman does nothing more strenuous than embroidery and paying social calls." It's the ultimate status symbol achieved not by what you own, but by how your own body is disciplined and controlled. The mainstream historical fact, of course, is that this ideal was a moving target. In the 1850s and 60s, the era of your youth, the desired shape was a small waist above a vast bell-shaped crinoline that made your lower half seem to float. Later in the century, the silhouette would shift, deflating in the front and swelling in the back with the addition of a bustle. Fashions would come and go, but the one constant, the anchor of femininity through all these decades, was the tightly laced waist. It was the price of admission for being seen as a fashionable, desirable woman. You take a small, delicate bite of toast. You must eat slowly in tiny portions. Your stomach is compressed, just like everything else, and a large meal would lead to indigestion and an unladylike feeling of fullness. This is another part of the sacrifice. You are perpetually a little bit hungry, a little bit out of breath. The discomfort is your constant companion, a dull, nagging ache around your middle, and you are not alone. Doctors of the day wrote endlessly about the maladies of the corset. They documented cases of cracked ribs, weakened back muscles that would atrophy from disuse, and severe respiratory problems. Most famously, they created detailed anatomical drawings showing how the internal organs, the liver, the stomach, the intestines were gruesomely displaced, squeezed into unnatural positions by years of tight lacing. And yet the practice continued, even promoted by some of those same doctors for providing support to the weak female frame. It's a bit like a modern surgeon warning you about the dangers of sun exposure right before recommending a great new tanning bed. The logic is flexible. The societal demand for the shape simply outweighed the well-documented health risks. This created a market for a fascinating and quirky product, the health corset. Manufacturers, sensing an opportunity, began to market new designs made with materials like woven wool or elastic panels, advertising them as hygienic or rational. They promised to provide the fashionable figure without the organ-crushing side effects. Of course, most of them still relied on the same principle of rigid compression, just with better branding. It was the 19th century version of a diet soda promising the pleasure without the guilt, but ultimately it was the same old drink in a new bottle. Your mother is speaking, discussing the afternoon's agenda. A visit to the dressmaker, a social call to be paid to Mrs. Gladstone. Your role is to listen, to nod, to agree. The corset helps with this. It enforces a kind of physical stillness, a placidity that can easily be mistaken for a compliant temperament. You look serene, you look attentive, even if your mind is 1,000 miles away, even if you are mentally calculating just how many hours you must remain encased like this before you can be free again. Scholars debate the extent to which this physical restriction was internalized, shaping not just women's bodies, but their very sense of self and psychological identity. When your every movement is curtailed, when every breath is shallow, does your spirit become shallow too? If you are physically prevented from running, from reaching, from bending and yielding as you please, does that create a corresponding psychological barrier? You feel the truth of this in your own bones, or rather in the whale bones that serve as your outer skeleton. You have been trained to take up less space in the world, both literally and figuratively. Your opinions, like your waist, are expected to be slender and tightly controlled. Your desires, like your organs, are to be kept neatly tucked away, out of sight. After breakfast, you prepare to go out. The simple act of putting on your shoes is a challenge. You cannot bend to reach them. You must sit, raise your foot to a small stool, and lean forward stiffly, a movement that strains against the laces of your corset. It's a moment of awkward, private struggle, a small battle won before you can present your effortless grace to the public. Honestly, the ability to put on one's own boots without grunting should have been considered an Olympic sport. Once outside, walking down the street, you are part of a silent parade. You see other ladies out with their companions or their maids, and you recognize the same uniform, the same silhouette. Their faces are placid, their gaits are measured and gliding. Each of them is a testament to the same discipline, the same daily sacrifice. They are all playing the same part in the same grand unspoken play. You exchange polite, meaningless nods. There is a strange sort of solidarity in it, but also an immense loneliness. You are all beautiful, perfect sculptures, and no one ever asks if the marble is aching. From a distance, you are the picture of elegance. But you know the truth. You are a collection of secrets, the first and most fundamental of which is the simple, constant, and unifying fact of your own discomfort. The afternoon is a series of meticulously performed rituals. You accompany your mother on her social calls, a journey into a succession of drawing rooms, each one a slight variation of the last. They are dim, stuffy spaces crowded with heavy, dark furniture, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and dried flowers. Every surface is laden with an astonishing array of objects: porcelain figurines, silver-framed photographs, souvenir spoons, and intricate displays of taxidermy birds under glass domes. It's a bit like navigating a museum where all the exhibits are aggressively collecting dust. You sit on a hard, unforgiving sofa, your back perfectly straight, and you sip weak tea from a cup so delicate you fear it might shatter in your gloved hand. The conversation is a murmuring river of polite inquiries and carefully chosen anecdotes. You discuss the weather, the sermon from last Sunday, the quality of the latest shipment of fabrics at the draper's. It is a language of surfaces where nothing of consequence is ever truly said. You speak of a mutual acquaintance's delicate constitution when you both know she is suffering from a deep depression. You praise a young man's strong character when you both know he is a notorious gambler. It is a complex dance of euphemism and omission, and you are an expert performer. You smile, you nod, you offer the correct gentle opinions. You are a mirror reflecting the perfect image of a well-bred young lady. Inside the corset continues its relentless squeeze, a constant reminder of the rigid structure underpinning this entire social charade. When you finally return home as dusk settles, a deep, bone-weary fatigue has set in. It's not the tiredness of a day well spent, but the exhaustion of a day spent in performance of holding a single rigid pose for hours on end. Your room, once the cold, grey space of your morning preparation, now feels like a sanctuary. The curtains are drawn, a single lamp casts a warm golden glow, and the fire has been lit, chasing the damp chill from the corners. Mary is there waiting to begin the ritual of undoing. The relief is so profound it is almost a physical pleasure. First, the dress with its dozens of tiny frustrating buttons and hooks is unfastened and lifted away. Then the layers of petticoats, the stiff cage of the crinoline, which is carefully collapsed and put aside. You are left in your chemise and the corset, the source of the day's confinement. You stand still just as you did this morning, but this time with a deep sense of anticipation. Mary's fingers find the knot at the small of your back and deftly pull it loose. You hear the whisper of the lace as it slides through the eyelets, slackening with each pull. The pressure around your ribs begins to dissolve, and then the moment of release. As the laces fall away completely and Mary unhooks the front busk, you instinctively take the first deep breath you have had since dawn. It is a glorious, dizzying sensation. Air floods your lungs, reaching places that have been compressed for over 12 hours. You can feel the blood rushing back into constricted vessels, pins and needles tingling across your skin. You feel your whole body slump, your shoulders rounding your spine, curving in a long-denied, luxurious slouch. You press a hand to your abdomen, feeling the softness there, a softness you had almost forgotten. The red marks and deep indentations left by the whalebone and laces on your skin are like a temporary tattoo, the stigmata of your daily sainthood. This feeling of freedom is so intense, so exquisite, that it almost makes the hours of constriction worthwhile. Almost. It's a cheap trick, really, enduring a headache all day just to enjoy the moment it stops. This private experience of dressing and undressing of the body under the clothes is a world historians rarely get to see. But we have glimpses. A mainstream historical fact that gives us a window into this hidden world comes from sources like the diaries of Arthur Munby. He was a middle-class gentleman who secretly married his maid Hannah Culwick, and he obsessively documented her life, including the incredible physical toil of her work and the complex relationship she had with the clothes she wore, from her heavy work boots to the corsets she sometimes wore to please him. These accounts, however strange, are priceless because they record the physical reality of a woman's life, something that was rarely considered important enough to write down. Now, in the soft comfort of your dressing gown, the second part of your evening ritual begins. The public performance is over. The private one is about to start. From a locked drawer in your writing desk, you retrieve a small leather-bound book. It has a brass clasp and a tiny, intricate key that you keep on a ribbon hidden in your jewelry box. This is your diary. The lock isn't just for decoration, it is a vital piece of security. It's the one thing that separates the world of the parlor from the world of your mind. You sometimes joke to yourself that your younger brother, who is always snooping, is probably practicing to be a spy by trying to pick it. But the fear is real. If this book were ever found and read, the placid, perfect daughter from the breakfast table would vanish, replaced by someone her family would neither understand nor approve of. This little book is the most dangerous object you own. It's your 19th century version of a private blog or a locked social media account, a space where the carefully curated public image is stripped away. And just as some people today use invisible ink for fun, it was a quirky but not unheard of practice for Victorian diarists to use it for their most secret thoughts. A little lemon juice dried carefully over a lamp could hide a sentence or a name in plain sight, a thrillingly clever way to keep a secret right out in the open. You've considered it, but you trust your little brass lock more. You dip your pen in the inkwell. The scent of the ink, earthy, a little metallic, fills the quiet air. In the parlor, your words are measured, your sentences balanced and polite. Here on the page they tumble out. They are messy, passionate, angry, and confused. The script slants words are crossed out. Ink is sometimes smudged by a tear you didn't realize was falling. And what do you write? You write about the crushing boredom of the afternoon's conversation. You write about the new book by Mr. Dickens and how a scene made your heart ache with a feeling you couldn't name. You write about the young man with the dark eyes you saw at church, and you dissect the single fleeting glance he sent your way, turning it over and over like a precious jewel trying to divine its meaning. You confess your jealousy of your brother who will go to university, who will travel, who will have a profession and a life in the wide world, while you are expected to desire nothing more than a good marriage and the management of a household. You write down the questions you cannot ask out loud. What is it like to be truly free? What would happen if I just said what I thought historians still argue about how to interpret these private writings? Are they a true, unfiltered window into the soul, or just another kind of performance? This time for an audience of one. Are you writing the real you, or are you crafting a romantic, tragic heroine for yourself to believe in? Perhaps the truth is that it's both. The diary is where you make sense of the girl in the corset and the girl in the nightgown. It's where you try to reconcile the two. You fill a page, then another. The longing pours out not just for a person, but for experience, for knowledge, for a life larger than this beautifully decorated, carefully managed, and suffocatingly small room. You are writing your way into existence. Finally, the pen slows. The emotional storm subsides, leaving a quiet calm in its wake. You blot the last page carefully, close the book, and turn the tiny key in the lock. Click. The sound is final. Your inner world is secure once more. You slide the book back into its drawer, and the two worlds you inhabit are again safely separated. The girl who talked about the weather in the parlor is gone. The girl who raged and dreamed on the page is hidden. All that is left is you, a quiet figure in the lamplight, finally ready for the brief, dreamless peace of sleep. A few days pass, each a careful copy of the one before. The same ritual of dressing, the same polite meals, the same constrained walks. The words you wrote in your diary have been locked away a secret between you and the paper. But today, something is different. A small parcel arrives for you in the mid-morning. It is wrapped in brown paper and tied with simple twine, but you know from the way the maid hands it to you with a small knowing glint in her eye that it is not a bill or a tract from the local vicar. You take it to your room, your heart beating a little faster. Your fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumble with the knot. Inside, nestled in a cone of damp tissue paper, is a small, tightly packed bouquet, a tussy-mussy. The air immediately fills with the heady, sweet scent of hyacinth and the fresh green smell of fern. The flowers are from him, the young man from the church, the one with the dark eyes. There is no card, no name. There doesn't need to be. The bouquet itself is the letter. You spread the flowers out on your dressing table, your mind racing. This is not a random assortment of pretty blooms. It is a sentence, a question, and you must now become its translator. This is the art of floriography, the language of flowers. In a world where a young man and woman are rarely permitted to speak freely, this is how a conversation is begun. It's a mainstream historical fact that this silent language became a craze during your era, with dozens of floral dictionaries published to help aspiring romantics navigate its complex grammar. For you, it is not a game, but a vital means of communication. It's the 19th century equivalent of trying to decode a crush's emoji usage. Does the smiley face mean he's happy, or is it sarcastic? Is the purple heart friendly, or something more? The stakes, however, are infinitely higher. You begin your work. At the center of the arrangement is a single, perfect purple hyacinth. Your own well-thumbed floral dictionary tells you what you already suspected it means. Please forgive me. Forgive him for what? For his boldness in sending this at all. Surrounding it are sprigs of delicate white heather, signifying protection or wishes will come true. Hopeful, promising. But then you see it tucked almost out of sight, a few leaves of rue. Rue means regret. Your heart sinks for a moment, but it is placed next to a vibrant red tulip, which is a declaration of love. What is the message then? Forgive my forwardness. I regret we cannot speak freely, but I declare my love and hope my wishes will come true. It is a complex, nuanced statement, full of the proper deference, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of passion. It is far more eloquent than anything he could have possibly said to you in a crowded parlor with your mother watching your every move. It's a thrilling, dangerous kind of poetry. Imagine the sheer panic of receiving a flower you couldn't identify. Is he declaring his undying passion? Or simply remarking that your hat resembles a prize-winning cabbage? It's a lot of pressure to put on a botany lesson. You press one of the tulip petals to your lips, the floral equivalent of a whispered secret. Now, you have a new problem. You must formulate a reply. You cannot send a bouquet in return that would be far too forward. But tonight at the Ashworth's annual ball, you will have your chance to answer. As evening falls, you begin the long process of preparing for the ball. The ritual is the same, the washing, the lacing of the corset, the layering, but the purpose feels different tonight. The corset feels less like armor and more like the stiff binding of a book whose story is about to become interesting. Mary helps you into your gown, a cascade of pale blue silk that rustles with every movement. And then you select your most important accessory. Not your necklace, not your earrings, but your fan. The fan is a delicate thing. Its sticks carved from ivory, the leaf made of painted silk depicting a pastoral scene of shepherds and shepherdesses. To the casual observer, it is an elegant and necessary tool for circulating the stuffy air of a crowded ballroom. But you and every other woman in that room know it is also a weapon, a shield, and a telegraph. While the intricate language of the fan was a popular topic in magazines and etiquette books, here is a quirky tidbit for you. Its actual practical use as a complex code was probably more myth than common practice. It was a romantic notion, and certainly some signals were widely understood, but the idea of two people having a full, detailed conversation through fan waving without looking completely ridiculous is a bit of a stretch. Still, for simple direct messages, it was an invaluable tool in the flirtatious arsenal. A dropped fan was almost always a plea for a gentleman's attention. A rapid flutter meant "I am excited," while a slow, languid wave signaled a certain cool indifference. Tonight, you will use it to give your answer. You review the gestures in your mind as the carriage rattles over the cobblestones. Holding the closed fan to your right cheek. Yes. To your left cheek. No. Tapping it on your lips. I wish to speak with you, drawing it slowly across your forehead. We are being watched. It feels silly to practice like a spy rehearsing a secret code, but the thought of seeing him across the ballroom floor makes your hands tremble slightly. The potential for a mortifying mistake is huge. You could be trying to signal, "I find you agreeable," and accidentally end up communicating, "My goodness, this room is drafty and I believe my uncle is a swindler." The ballroom is a dazzling assault on the senses. Hundreds of candles glitter in the crystal chandeliers, their light refracting into 1,000 tiny rainbows. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of perfume, beeswax, and champagne. A string orchestra is playing a waltz, the music a swirling, intoxicating beat that seems to pull you into the heart of the crowd. You stand with your mother, your back straight, a polite, neutral smile on your face, while your eyes scan the room. And then you see him. He is standing near the French doors, speaking with another young man, but his eyes are searching just as yours are. They meet yours across the crush of people, and for a moment, the entire noisy, glittering room seems to fall away. It is just the two of you. He gives a barely perceptible nod, a silent question. Did you receive my message? This is the moment. Your mother is momentarily distracted by an acquaintance. It is now or never. You raise your fan. Your movements are slow, deliberate, disguised as a casual gesture of thought. You bring the closed fan up and gently, briefly touch it to your right cheek. Yes. His eyes widen almost imperceptibly. A slow smile spreads across his face. He understands. The message has been sent and received. It's a conversation that has happened in less than 5 seconds in complete silence in a room full of chaperones and gossips, and it is more thrilling than any volume of poetry you have ever read. Historians and literary scholars still debate just how much of this coded communication was a genuine, widely understood practice versus a romanticized fiction created by the popular press of the era. Was every drawing room a hotbed of floral intrigue and fan-telegraphed trysts? Probably not. But for you tonight, the language is real. It is a lifeline. In a world that demands your silence and your passivity, you have found a way to speak. You have taken the very objects meant to signify your delicate femininity, a flower, a fan, and turned them into instruments of your own will. It is a small act of rebellion, a whisper of desire sent out into a loud, restrictive world. And as he begins to make his way through the crowd towards you, you feel a sense of power that is as intoxicating as the waltz, a quiet, certain knowledge that you have in your own small way taken control of your own story. The thrill of the ball, that single perfect moment of silent communication, has to sustain you for days. The world does not speed up to match the pace of your beating heart. Instead, it seems to slow down. The rituals of society move at a glacial pace. The young man whose name you now know is Mr. Davies cannot simply call on you the next day. He must find a formal, proper way to be reintroduced into your circle, perhaps through a mutual acquaintance. He might leave his calling card. The entire process is a slow, agonizingly indirect campaign, and you are expected to wait placidly and patiently with no sign of the nervous excitement that churns within you. The days following the ball are therefore a test of your endurance. The drawing room feels smaller, the conversations even more vapid. The straight, unyielding line of your corset feels less like a shield and more like a prison. The longing for something to happen, for the next chapter of your own story to begin, is a palpable physical ache. So you do what countless women like you do when the world they inhabit becomes too small and too slow. You escape into one created from paper and ink. In a quiet hour of the afternoon, when your mother is resting and the house is still, you retrieve your latest treasure. It is not a book of poetry or a volume of sermons recommended by the vicar. It comes from a circulating library, its cover hidden by a plain, functional brown paper wrapper, which is for the best, as its title is something like The Shadow on the Moors or The Secret of Blackwood Grange. It is a sensation novel, and in the quiet, respectable world of your home, it is the equivalent of a lit stick of dynamite. These books are the talk of the town, whispered about in horrified, delighted tones. Critics and clergymen condemn them from pulpits, and in the pages of serious journals calling them a moral poison that will corrupt the minds of the nation's youth, particularly its young women. And that, of course, is precisely why you cannot get enough of them. The modern equivalent might be binge-watching a scandalous, twisty TV series that everyone is talking about, the kind you know is probably not high art, but is so addictive you can't stop. This is your forbidden pleasure, your secret vice. It's a mainstream historical fact that these sensation novels, particularly in the 1860s, were publishing phenomena. Authors like Wilkie Collins, with his masterpiece The Woman in White, and Mary Elizabeth Braddon, with the shocking Lady Audley's Secret, became literary superstars. They took the dark, Gothic elements of earlier fiction and brought them into the drawing rooms and country houses of contemporary England. The ghosts were no longer in crumbling castles, they were the secrets hiding within the family itself. You find your favorite reading spot, a cushioned window seat that looks out over the garden but is shielded from view of the door. You open the book and the world around you simply melts away. The scent of your mother's roses in the garden vanishes, replaced by the smell of damp earth and mystery. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall fades, replaced by the frantic imagined beating of the heroine's heart as she listens at a locked door. The story is a whirlwind of everything your life is not. The heroine is not a passive, obedient girl waiting for her life to be decided for her. She is beautiful, yes, but she is also clever, and she is often in terrible, thrilling trouble. She might be a governess who discovers her employer has a secret mad wife locked in the attic. She might be a lovely, sweet-natured young bride who it is slowly revealed is also a bigamist and possibly a murderess. The plots are intricate webs of mistaken identity blackmail, long-lost heirs theft, and adultery. These are words concepts that are never ever uttered in polite society, and here you are consuming them with rapt attention. For a Victorian woman, reading about another woman who travels alone on a train could be as shocking as any of the crimes. The sheer audacity, you are completely engrossed. Your breathing becomes shallow, not from the pressure of your corset, but from suspense. Your own small, predictable life is forgotten. You are for this hour Lady Audley with your beautiful face and your dark, terrible secret. You are Marian Halcombe. With your sharp mind and your unwavering courage, you are experiencing a world of passion, danger, and agency that is utterly denied to you. It is a vicarious rebellion. This is why the critics are so terrified of these books. They aren't just stories, they are ideas. They suggest that a woman can have a past, that she can have desires that defy social convention, that the placid surface of domestic life can be a lie. And this brings us to a wonderfully quirky medical tidbit from the era. The moral panic over these books was so intense that some doctors claim to have identified a new set of female ailments called sensation sickness or novel mania. They argued that the overly exciting plots could damage a woman's delicate nervous system, leading to hysteria, sleeplessness, and a general disregard for her domestic duties. The prescribed cure was, of course, to stop reading immediately and perhaps engage in some calming, mindless needlepoint instead. You smile to yourself. If feeling your own heart race and your mind come alive is a sickness you have no desire to be cured, you finish a particularly dramatic chapter and force yourself to look up. The afternoon sun is slanting low through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The grandfather clock chimes the hour. The spell is broken. The silence of your own home rushes back in, and the contrast between the world in the book and your own reality is almost jarring. The book is a temporary escape, but it's a dangerous one. It doesn't just help you forget your own constraints, it makes you more acutely aware of them. It gives a name to the vague longing you feel, shaping it into a desire for passion, for meaning, for a life where you are the protagonist, not a supporting character. Literary critics and historians still debate whether sensation novels ultimately reinforced traditional gender roles by punishing their transgressive heroines, or if they provided a genuinely subversive outlet for female readers' frustrations. After all, Lady Audley is discovered and condemned. The adulteress is often cast out, and yet she acted. She made choices. She had a secret. The memory of her power lingers long after the memory of her punishment. You hear your mother's footsteps on the stairs. With a speed born of practice, you close the book and slide it under the cushion of the window seat. It's a move you've perfected, hiding your contraband as if it were a bottle of gin. When she enters the room, you are sitting quietly, hands folded in your lap, the very picture of serene, dutiful daughterhood. She asks what you have been doing. Just enjoying the view, Mama. You reply, your voice calm and even. She smiles, satisfied. She has no idea you have just returned from a world of secrets, madness, and intrigue. She has no idea that the quiet girl in the window seat is holding a universe of dangerous thoughts and borrowed desires, all of it hidden for now just beneath the surface. The days after you finish your novel are the worst. The fictional world has collapsed, leaving you stranded in the stark, unchanging landscape of your own reality, Mr. Davies has become a character in his own slow-moving story, and the polite, formal dance of courtship feels like a parody of the passionate intrigues you've just been reading about. A restlessness takes root in you. It's a strange, unfamiliar feeling, a buzzing energy under your skin with nowhere to go. You pace your room. You find you cannot concentrate on your embroidery. The tiny, repetitive stitches seem to mock the grand, chaotic feelings swirling inside you. Then the physical symptoms begin. It starts as a tightness in your throat, a feeling that you might burst into tears for no reason at all. Sometimes you are struck by a wave of profound lethargy, so heavy you can barely lift your arms. At other times, your heart will begin to hammer in your chest as if you've been running though you are only sitting in a chair. You have trouble sleeping, and when you do, your dreams are vivid and unsettling. You are losing your appetite. Your body, it seems, has decided to go on strike. It is refusing to participate in the placid, orderly life that is expected of you. Your mother notices your pale cheeks and the dark circles under your eyes. She sees you push food around your plate at dinner. She hears you sighing. Her brow furrows with concern. You are not behaving like a happy, healthy young woman on the cusp of a promising social season. You are becoming delicate. After a week of this, she declares that she is sending for Dr. Albright. Dr. Albright is a man in his late 50s with impressive grey sideburns and a demeanour that is both kindly and deeply patronising. He smells of carbolic soap and damp wool. He arrives with his black leather bag and treats you as if you are a charming but slightly malfunctioning clock. He sits by your bedside, takes your wrist between his thumb and forefinger to check your pulse, and asks your mother a series of questions while you lie there silently. Has her appetite been poor? Is she sleeping badly? Any shortness of breath? Any fits of melancholy? Your mother confirms it all. The doctor nods sagely. He doesn't ask you a single question about your thoughts or feelings. He doesn't inquire if you are bored or lonely or frustrated, or if you feel like you are living in a cage. He is a man of science, and the root of your problem to him is perfectly clear. It is a biological, not a biographical issue. He turns to your mother and delivers his verdict in a low, serious tone. It is a textbook case, he says. Her nerves are overexcited. She is suffering from a touch of female hysteria. Hysteria. The word hangs in the air. It is the great catch-all diagnosis for almost everything a woman can suffer from. It's a mainstream historical fact that for doctors in your time, the term hysteria covered a dizzying array of symptoms from anxiety and fainting spells to insomnia, irritability, and even just a general rebelliousness. The diagnosis has its roots in ancient Greece from the word hystera, meaning uterus. The prevailing theory for centuries was that a woman's womb was a restless, almost animalistic organ that could wander about her body, causing all manner of physical and emotional chaos. In your more modern scientific age, the womb isn't thought to be literally mobile, but it is still seen as the root cause of a woman's inherent emotional instability. It's the ultimate medical get-out-of-jail-free card for any male doctor baffled by a female patient. Can't figure it out. Blame the uterus. Dr. Albright then outlines his prescribed treatment. For a severe case, he might recommend a stay at a sanatorium, but for you, he suggests a home version of the now famous rest cure, pioneered by an American doctor named S. Weir Mitchell. The instructions are simple and absolute. You are to be confined to your bed for at least 6 weeks. You are to have complete physical and mental rest. This means no visitors apart from your mother and your maid for brief periods, no sitting up, no hobbies, and most importantly, no reading and no writing. The mind must be allowed to lie fallow, Dr. Albright explains. An overstimulated imagination is often the primary cause of the agitation. To build up your physical strength, you are to be fed a rich diet of milk, eggs, and beef broth, brought to you at regular intervals. It sounds less like a cure and more like a gentle, medically sanctioned form of solitary confinement. The very things that give you solace, your books, your diary, are now forbidden. You are being sentenced to a period of profound and total boredom in order to cure you of the devastating effects of boredom. It's an irony so perfect it's almost funny. Now for a quirky and rather bizarre fact about the treatment of hysteria. For some women, particularly those with more agitated symptoms, doctors would sometimes perform a procedure known as a pelvic massage. The goal was to manually induce what they termed a hysterical paroxysm to relieve the patient's pent-up nervous energy. We would of course call this a doctor-induced orgasm. This was a clinical medical procedure, and it became so common and so taxing on the physician's hands that it directly led to the invention of the first electromechanical vibrators in the late 1800s to make the process more efficient. Your Dr. Albright is far too conservative for such a radical therapy, but it serves as a strange testament to just how deeply and bizarrely the medical establishment linked female health to the reproductive organs. And so your new life begins, a life confined to the 4 walls of your bedroom. The days stretch into an endless expanse of quiet and stillness. But a strange thing happens. As your physical world shrinks, your illness grants you a new, peculiar kind of power. Your family now tiptoes around the house. Conversations are held in whispers. Your every sigh is analyzed. Your refusal to eat the beef broth is a small domestic crisis. You are no longer just the quiet daughter. You are the invalid. Your presence or lack thereof dictates the emotional temperature of the entire household. Your weeping fits are no longer a private shame, but a dramatic event that brings your mother rushing to your side with smelling salts. A fainting spell effectively ends any tedious conversation or social obligation. In a world where you are expected to be constantly agreeable and accommodating, your illness gives you the legitimate socially acceptable power to say no. You cannot come down for dinner. You cannot receive visitors. You cannot attend church. Your body, through its mysterious rebellion, is accomplishing what your voice never could. It is an unconscious protest, a strike against the duties of a daughter, a lady, a woman. Being sick, you realize, is the only way you're allowed to take a day off. Historians and feminist scholars still debate the nature of hysteria. Was it a purely physiological condition misunderstood by Victorian medicine, or was it a form of unconscious protest, a body language used by women who had no other means to express their profound unhappiness? Lying in your bed, feeling the strange calm that comes with utter passivity, you believe it is the latter. You did not choose to be sick, but your body, that silent, long-suffering partner in your life, decided it had had enough. It took the formless, nameless despair you confided to your diary and gave it a physical form, a set of symptoms that the world in its own clumsy way was forced to acknowledge. The diagnosis is wrong, but the pain is real. Your body has become a canvas for all your unspoken feelings, and your illness is its desperate, tragic, and strangely beautiful masterpiece. 6 weeks of lying in bed has done little to cure your soul, though it has made you an expert on the patterns of the wallpaper in your room. Your melancholy has not lifted. It has simply become quiet and stagnant. Dr. Albright, upon his weekly visit, purses his lips. The rest cure has reached the limits of its efficacy. It is time for the next weapon in the medical arsenal against female nervousness, a complete change of air. The miasma of the city is not conducive to a delicate constitution, he proclaims. What she needs is the warm sun and the stimulating culture of the continent. I recommend a tour of Italy. Your father, seeing a new, more interesting and frankly less depressing prescription, readily agrees. It is decided. You and your Aunt Mildred, your father's unmarried sister, and a woman whose spine is even more rigid than your corset, will spend 2 months abroad. It is presented as a continuation of your medical treatment, a final step in your convalescence. You are to receive the news with quiet gratitude, not with the wild, leaping excitement that actually ignites within you. After months of confinement in your room, the idea of seeing a new city, a new country, feels like being promised a trip to the moon. The preparation for the journey is a monumental undertaking. A mountain of luggage is assembled: trunks for your dresses, smaller cases for your hats and shoes, a portable writing desk, and an entire box dedicated to medicines and tonics. It looks less like you are going on a holiday and more like you are migrating with all your worldly possessions. The journey itself is a sensory explosion after the profound silence of your sick room. The shriek of the train's whistle, the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the wheels on the track. The grimy, coal-dusted air, the dizzying sensation of the cross-channel ferry pitching on the waves, it's all overwhelming and utterly exhilarating. But as the journey progresses, a familiar reality sets in. You may be traveling across the world, but you are still living within the same tiny, prescribed bubble of Victorian womanhood. Your Aunt Mildred is your chaperone, your jailer, your walking rulebook. Her presence is a constant, silent reminder of your role. You are not a traveler. You are a lady who is traveling. And there is a world of difference. She ensures your corset is properly laced, that you do not speak to unintroduced strangers, and that your interest in the sights remains that of a genteel tourist, not a passionate scholar. A mainstream historical fact of your time is that while the Grand Tour was a rite of passage for wealthy young men for young women, it was a much more controlled affair. It was designed to round out their cultural education, making them more accomplished and therefore more marriageable. It was about collecting a few carefully curated experiences, not about genuine exploration. Your aunt, in essence, is a human version of a modern parental control app on a teenager's phone, constantly monitoring your location and filtering your content. You arrive in Florence, and the city is a riot of colour, noise and life that makes London seem muted and grey. The air is warm and smells of sun-baked stone garlic and flowers. People in the streets gesture wildly as they speak, their voices rising and falling with a passion that would be considered scandalous back home. Everything is brighter, louder, and more alive. Your Aunt Mildred, of course, complains about the dust and the questionable sanitation. You are taken to the Uffizi Gallery. As you walk through the long, echoing halls, you are surrounded by a vision of womanhood entirely different from the one you know. In the paintings of Botticelli and Titian, women are not pale, demure figures shrinking in the corner of a drawing room. They are goddesses, saints and sinners. They are Venus rising from the sea, her body unapologetically sensual. They are Judith, fierce and righteous, holding the severed head of her enemy. Their bodies are soft and fleshy, unconstrained by corsets. Their faces are full of emotion, sorrow, ecstasy, fury, and love. You stand before a painting of the Madonna, her face radiating a profound, powerful compassion, and you feel a sense of awe that has nothing to do with religious piety. It is the recognition of a female power you have never been allowed to see. This exposure to a new world plants a seed of an idea. A quirky tidbit from travelogues of the era is that English ladies traveling on the continent often gained a reputation for being a bit eccentric. Freed even slightly from the intense scrutiny of their home society, they would march through Roman ruins with their Baedeker guidebooks, sketching ancient columns and debating historical facts with a seriousness that sometimes startled the locals. It was a brief, socially sanctioned window in which they could be intellectuals. You feel a flicker of that spirit yourself. While your aunt is fanning herself and worrying that the draft in the Duomo will give her a chill, you are secretly committing every detail of a Donatello sculpture to memory, your mind buzzing with a kind of academic excitement you haven't felt since your governess dismissed your study of history as unnecessary for a young lady. The most intoxicating moments are the small, stolen ones. One afternoon, while your aunt is taking her prescribed nap, you slip out onto the small balcony of your hotel room. Below you is a piazza, a vibrant theatre of daily life. Children are chasing pigeons. A woman is haggling loudly with a fruit seller. Two lovers are sharing a pastry, their heads close together. You watch, completely unobserved, for a full 10 minutes. You are not on display. You are not performing. You are simply looking. And the feeling of anonymity is so profound, so liberating, it makes you feel lightheaded. This tiny 10-minute rebellion feels more real and more vital than anything you have experienced in months. You are getting better. Your appetite has returned. The color is back in your cheeks. The dizzy spells and weeping fits have ceased. Your aunt and your parents in their letters from home will attribute it to the Italian sun and the respite from London's foul air. But you know the truth. It is not the air that has cured you, but the ideas. It is the stimulation of your mind, the feeding of your starved senses, the brief, tantalizing taste of an autonomous existence. Historians debate whether the Grand Tour for women was ultimately a tool of social control, reinforcing their cultural education for the marriage market, or if it was a genuinely liberating experience that planted the seeds of later feminist thought. Standing on that balcony, you feel the pull of both truths. This trip is meant to make you a more polished, cultured product for society's consumption. But it has also shown you that other worlds, other ways of being exist. It has given you a new landscape for your daydreams. All too soon, the trip is over. As the train carries you north back toward the grey skies of England, a sense of melancholy returns, but it is different from the one that sent you here. It is not the formless despair of confinement, but the sharp, specific ache of a freedom tasted and then withdrawn. You have been allowed a glimpse over the garden wall, and now you are being returned to your meticulously manicured prison. You are cured of your hysteria, but you are returning home with a much more dangerous ailment, a memory of what it felt like for a few brief moments to be free. You return to London in the damp chill of early autumn. The grey, soot-stained facades of the houses seem to press in on you, and the familiar smell of coal smoke and wet pavement feels like a thick blanket smothering the bright, clean memory of Italian air. Your home, which you once thought of as a sanctuary, now feels claustrophobic, its heavy furniture and dark papered walls absorbing the limited light. You are pronounced cured, a success story for both Dr. Albright's methods and your family's attentive care. The performance of your recovery is the first one you are expected to give, and you play the part of the grateful, revitalized daughter with practiced ease. Now that you are well, you must re-enter the world. Your illness created a pause in your social life, a debt that must now be repaid. Your mother, a masterful general of the domestic sphere, has a campaign strategy already mapped out. On the hall table, the large silver tray known as a salver, which had sat empty during your convalescence, is now beginning to fill up again with messages from the outside world. They are not letters, but small, crisp white rectangles of cardstock calling cards. They are inquiries after your health, welcomes back to the city, and gentle reminders of your place in the intricate social web. "We must begin to return these calls," your mother announces one morning, gesturing to the collection, "and make our own. We have been out of society for far too long." And so you are conscripted back into the army of polite society, and your primary weapon is your own set of calling cards nestled in a slim, elegant case of polished silver that you carry in your handbag. This is the art and science of the call, a ritual so bound by rules it makes the most complex court ceremony look like a casual get-together. It is, in essence, the Victorian version of managing your social media presence, a constant, low-level effort to maintain connections, signal status, and stay relevant. A proper call, for instance, must last no longer than 15 minutes. You time it in your head, making your excuses and rising to leave just as the clock on the mantelpiece is about to strike the quarter hour. To stay longer is an imposition. To leave sooner is an insult. It's a nerve-wracking piece of social timing. The cards themselves are a language. A mainstream historical fact is that the etiquette surrounding visiting cards in your era was incredibly complex and universally understood by the upper and middle classes. When you and your mother call on a household, you don't just leave a card, you perform a precise calculation. You leave one of your mother's cards for the lady of the house. Then you leave one of your own personal cards for the lady of the house, and one for each of the unmarried daughters who live there. If the family is not at home, you hand the cards to the maid who answers the door, and she places them on the silver salver in the hall. Your visit is now officially logged in the social record. But the real subtlety, the hidden layer of communication, lies in the corners of the card. A plain, flat card left at a door is a simple statement, "I called." But by folding a corner, you can leave a much more specific message. You and your mother prepare a stack of cards before you set out in the carriage, performing a kind of paper-folding sorcery. For the newly married Mrs. Peterson, you both fold down the top right corner of your cards. This signifies a visit of congratulation. For the Willoughby family, who recently lost their patriarch, you fold the top left corner. This is a visit of condolence, a quiet expression of sympathy that requires no awkward conversation. A card with the bottom right corner turned down is a farewell left when you're about to leave the city for a long period. It says, "Pour prendre congé," or "to take one's leave." It is a brilliantly efficient system, allowing you to fulfill your social obligations with minimal actual social interaction. But it's also fraught with peril. The horror of folding the wrong corner, accidentally congratulating a widow on her recent bereavement, for example, is the stuff of social nightmares. It's a high-stakes game of origami. A quirky tidbit is that some etiquette guides even proposed a system of penciled initials on cards for more complex messages. But this was generally considered a bit too theatrical. The folded corner was the accepted code, a subtle, elegant, and silent way of speaking. You spend the afternoon in the carriage, moving from house to house, a trail of coded cardstock in your wake. It is tedious, repetitive work, and it stands in stark contrast to the memories of Italy that still play in your mind. There you saw grand, passionate histories carved in stone and painted on canvas. Here you are, living a history written on tiny rectangles of paper, its most dramatic moments conveyed by a dog-eared corner. Then, one afternoon, the maid enters the drawing room where you are sitting with your mother. She carries the silver salver, and on it rests a single solitary calling card. It is for you. Your heart gives a little flutter. The card is thick, the edges are sharp, the engraving of the name, Mr. Alistair Davies, is clean and perfectly rendered in a simple masculine script. It is an object of quality and taste. You and your mother examine it like two archaeologists studying a newly discovered relic. The card itself is a statement. But is there a message beyond the simple fact of its existence? There is no folded corner. It is a formal inquiry, a sign that he wishes to re-establish contact now that you are returned and officially well. The card is the first parry in the formal duel of courtship. By leaving it, he has made his move. It is now your family's turn to respond, likely by inviting him to tea. Social historians debate whether these rigid etiquette systems were primarily tools of social exclusion designed to keep the wrong sort of people out, or if they provided a stable framework that actually facilitated social interaction in a rapidly growing and anonymizing urban society. Holding this small piece of paper, you can feel the truth of both sides. This card is part of a system that constrains you, that forces your budding relationship with Mr. Davies into a slow, formal, and frustratingly indirect channel. And yet without this system, he would have no proper way to approach you at all. It is both a barrier and a bridge. You run your thumb over the raised letters of his name. After the chaos of your illness and the freedom of your travels, you are back in the game. The rules are stifling, the pace is maddeningly slow, but it is the only game you are allowed to play. This simple card is not a declaration of love, not a passionate plea. It is a quiet, coded signal of intent, and in your world, that is more than enough to make your heart beat faster. It is a promise that your own story, which had been paused for so long, is about to begin again. Mr. Davies's card is the opening move. The counter-move, orchestrated by your mother with the precision of a field marshal, is to ensure your attendance at the upcoming Delacourt Ball, an event of such social magnitude that a mere invitation is a victory in itself. You know with a certainty that makes your stomach flutter that he will be there. The weeks leading up to the ball are a flurry of preparation. A new gown of cream-colored silk is commissioned, its creation involving endless, tedious fittings where you must stand perfectly still while the dressmaker, her mouth full of pins, sculpts the fabric to your corseted form. On the night of the ball, the ritual of dressing is more elaborate than ever. The corset is laced a fraction of an inch tighter, pushing your waist to its absolute minimum and creating a dramatic shelf for your bosom, which is tastefully displayed by the gown's low neckline. Mary arranges your hair in an intricate cascade of curls. You slip on long white kidskin gloves that reach past your elbow. Every detail is designed to present an image of flawless, ethereal femininity. You are a work of art, a sculpture of silk and bone and tightly controlled flesh, ready to be displayed. The carriage deposits you into a river of other carriages, all converging on the Delacourt's vast city mansion. The house blazes with light, every window a golden square against the dark night. As you step inside, the sensory impact is immediate and overwhelming. It is the heat from hundreds of candles and the new brilliant glare of gaslight. It is the sound, a wall of noise composed of the orchestra tuning its instruments, the rustle of 100 silk gowns, and the ceaseless humming chatter of the guests. It is the sight of a sea of people. The women in a rainbow of jewel-toned gowns, the men a uniform of stark black and white. And above all, it is the intoxicating scent of floral perfume, hot wax, and champagne. You take your place beside your mother and Aunt Mildred along the wall with the other chaperones and unmarried daughters. The chaperones sit like a row of vigilant dragons guarding their treasure, their eyes scanning the room, missing nothing. This is the great theatre of desire, but its stage is strictly policed, and then you are handed the most important tool of the evening, your dance card. It's a small, delicate booklet of ivory-coloured card with a tiny pencil attached by a silken cord. Inside the evening's dances are listed quadrilles, polkas, and of course, the waltz. It's a mainstream historical fact that a young lady's success at a ball was measured by how full her dance card became. A girl with many empty slots was a wallflower, a social failure. A full card was a triumph. The process is a strange blend of adolescent romance and bureaucratic scheduling, as young men, sweating slightly in their stiff collars, formally approach and request the honor of signing their name next to a specific dance. You feel a familiar anxiety as you see a particularly boring, persistent suitor named Mr. Finch making a beeline for you, pencil in hand. You quickly pretend to be engrossed in conversation with your aunt. It's a close shave. Then, through the crowd, you see Mr. Davies. He is taller than you remembered, and he looks impossibly handsome in his formal evening wear. He makes his way toward you, his expression serious and intent. He bows. "Good evening," he says, his voice a low, steady sound in the general din. "May I have the honor?" He gestures with his own pencil toward your dance card. You hand it to him, your gloved fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. He signs his name next to the third waltz. The waltz. Your heart leaps. He could have chosen a formal, stately quadrille, but he chose the waltz, the most intimate and daring dance of them all. The waltz is still considered a little scandalous by the older generation. When it first swept across the ballrooms of Europe, it was met with outrage. A quirky tidbit is that moralists published furious pamphlets against it. Lord Byron himself wrote a poem condemning the hugging dance. Why? Because unlike the group dances where partners touched only fingertips, the waltz required a man to place his hand firmly on a woman's waist and hold her in a close embrace, their bodies moving as one unit. One critic called it an open exhibition of licentious indecency, which naturally only made it more thrillingly popular. It was the 19th century equivalent of a shocking new dance trend that horrifies parents, a physical intimacy that felt both dangerous and irresistible. The time for the third waltz arrives. Mr. Davies appears at your side to claim his dance. He leads you onto the floor. He turns to you, places one hand on your waist, and takes your other hand in his. His touch, even through the layers of your gown and his gloves, is electric. The orchestra begins the famous soaring 1-2-3 rhythm of the waltz, filling the room. And then you are moving. He sweeps you into the swirling mass of dancers. The world dissolves into a blur of color and light. All you are aware of is his hand on your back, guiding you, his eyes locked on yours. You are spinning a dizzying, exhilarating sensation that is both terrifying and wonderful. This is the closest you have ever been to a man who is not your father or your brother. You can feel the warmth of his body, see the small details of his face. For the 3 minutes this dance lasts, you are in a private world sanctioned by society, but charged with a deeply personal, unspoken emotion. You can talk. A dance is one of the few opportunities for a private conversation. But the words are still a code. "You are enjoying the ball?" he asks. "Very much. The music is divine," you reply, "not as divine as the company." The compliment hangs in the air between you. It is a bold move, but his steady gaze makes it feel sincere, not frivolous. You talk of your trip to Italy, and he listens with an intensity that makes you feel as though your opinions are the most fascinating things he has ever heard. The real conversation is not in the words, but in the spaces between them, in a shared glance, in the slight reassuring pressure of his hand on your back as he guides you through a turn. Historians argue over the true function of the ballroom. Was it a highly regulated marriage market, where families soberly assessed potential matches? Or was it a space of carnivalesque release, where the strict rules of society were temporarily relaxed to allow for genuine romantic expression? As you spin in Mr. Davies's arms, you feel that it is impossibly both. Your mother is watching. His family is watching. 1,000 calculations of wealth, status, and suitability are being made in the minds of everyone in the room. And yet in this moment, all you feel is the dizzying, terrifying, beautiful reality of a human connection that feels entirely your own. The music swells to a crescendo, and then all too soon, it ends. The dancers applaud, and the private world you inhabited vanishes. He escorts you back to your chaperone, bows, and thanks you for the honor. You sink into your chair, breathless, your face flushed. You lift your fan and begin to wave it with a hand that is not quite steady, trying to look the very picture of composure of a lady who is merely a little warm from the exertion. But inside your mind is still spinning. Your body still holds the phantom sensation of his hand on your waist. You have just waltzed on the very edge of scandal, and you have never felt more alive. The afterglow of the waltz lingers for weeks, a warm, secret ember you carry inside you. The world seems charged with possibility. You are waiting for the next move in the slow, formal chess game of your courtship with Mr. Davies. In the midst of this hopeful quiet, an unusual invitation arrives. It is from a Mrs. Blackwood, a wealthy widow with a reputation for being artistic, intellectual, and ever so slightly eccentric. She is hosting an evening gathering, but the card specifies it is not for dancing or cards. It is to witness a communication with the spirit world. Your mother is hesitant. Spiritualism is all the rage in certain fashionable circles, but it is also viewed with deep suspicion by more conservative society. It is a bit too strange, a bit too American in its origins. But curiosity, that powerful social engine, wins out. It is important to be aware of the currents of modern thought, she says, justifying her decision. You are simply thrilled. It is a step outside the predictable round of balls and tea parties, a foray into the mysterious and the forbidden. You arrive at Mrs. Blackwood's home, and it is immediately clear you are in a different world. The house is not decorated with the usual stuffy formality. The gas lights are turned down low, and the rooms are filled with velvet drapes, exotic-looking ferns and artifacts that look like they have been gathered from the far corners of the empire. The air smells of sandalwood incense, a scent that is both cloying and intriguing. There are only a dozen guests, a mix of sober-looking gentlemen with scientific-looking beards, elegantly dressed ladies with intense, curious eyes, and a few people who have the unmistakable hollow-eyed look of the recently bereaved. This gathering is part of a massive cultural phenomenon. It's a mainstream historical fact that spiritualism, the belief that the living could communicate with the spirits of the dead, had become a powerful and popular movement by your time. In an era of rigid scientific progress and equally rigid religious dogma, it offered a strange and compelling middle ground, a faith that could be scientifically proven through empirical evidence like table rapping and spirit voices. It's not so different, really, from the modern desire to find meaning in things outside the establishment, whether it's through astrology apps, crystal healing, or tarot cards. It is a search for answers, for comfort, and for a sense of control in a confusing world. You are led into the drawing room, where a large round table dominates the center. The heavy curtains are drawn, plunging the room into a deep twilight. Mrs. Blackwood invites her guests to take a seat around the table. The mood is hushed, a mixture of nervous excitement and solemn reverence. Then the medium is brought in. You are expecting someone old and mysterious, a gypsy-like figure. But the woman who enters is young, not much older than yourself. She is dressed plainly, and her face is pale and serious. Her name is Miss Eva. There is nothing remarkable about her except for the quiet, confident way she holds herself. She is not a lady of high society, yet in this room she is the most important person present. She is the conduit, the main event. The gas lights are extinguished completely. The only light comes from a single candle flickering in the center of the table, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. You are instructed to join hands with the people on either side of you. The circle is complete. A collective indrawn breath is the only sound. Miss Eva begins to speak, her voice a low murmur inviting the spirits to make their presence known. For a long time, nothing happens. The silence stretches, becoming heavy and tense. You can hear the ticking of a clock in the hall, the sound of your own heart beating. You begin to think this is all a silly, theatrical waste of time. And then a sharp rap comes from the wooden table, making everyone jump. Another follows, and another. The séance has begun. The medium's breathing becomes deeper, heavier. She lets out a long, shuddering sigh, and when she speaks again, her voice is different. It is the voice of an old man, gruff and low. It is Albert, her spirit guide. Through Albert, the spirits of the dead are invited to speak. A gentleman asks if his late brother is at peace. The medium, now channeling a different, lighter voice, assures him that he is providing a detail about a childhood memory that makes the man gasp and openly weep. A widow asks for a sign from her husband. A faint, cool breeze seems to stir the air around her, and she lets out a small cry of joy. You hope the spirits don't start revealing things you've written in your diary. That would be a truly terrifying supernatural event. The most shocking part is when a spirit claiming to be a recently departed social reformer begins to speak through Miss Eva. The voice is strong, clear, and full of passionate indignation. It speaks about the plight of the poor, the hypocrisy of the church, the need for women's suffrage. It is a fiery, radical political speech delivered in a dark, candle-lit room, and it is coming from the mouth of a quiet, unassuming young woman. Here in the darkness, she is a vessel for ideas that would see her ostracized from society if she dared to speak them in her own voice in the light of day. It is a stunning performance. This brings us to a wonderfully strange and theatrical, quirky tidbit about the movement. Some mediums, known as physical mediums, were not content with just voices. They claim to be able to produce ectoplasm, a physical manifestation of spirit energy. This was often a bizarre cheesecloth-like substance that would appear to issue from the medium's mouth or nose in the darkness, much to the astonishment of the sitters. Most of these phenomena were later exposed as simple trickery using hidden gauze or muslin. But it speaks to the immense pressure on these mediums to produce ever more dramatic proof. As you sit there, hands clammy, your skepticism battling with a growing sense of awe, you realize what you are truly witnessing. You are seeing a woman hold power. In this room, Miss Eva is a priestess, a psychoanalyst, and a political orator, all in one. She is commanding the attention of men and women of all social classes who hang on her every word. And she is able to do it all through a brilliant and perhaps unconscious loophole. The voice is not hers, the opinions are not hers, the power is not hers. It all belongs to the spirits. She is merely the humble, passive instrument. Historians and sociologists argue whether female mediums were conscious manipulators exploiting a gullible public, or if they were genuinely convinced of their own powers, using the trance state as a subconscious outlet for their own repressed intelligence and ambition. Looking at Miss Eva's pale, serene face in the candlelight after the spirits have departed, it's impossible to know. But it doesn't really matter. The result is the same. She has found a way to have a powerful public voice by claiming it isn't hers at all. Faking a ghostly possession seems like an awful lot of effort. But perhaps it's the only way to get a word in edgewise. You leave the Blackwoods house late that night, your mind reeling. The tidy, predictable world of dance cards and social calls has been temporarily ripped open, revealing a much stranger, darker, and more complicated universe beneath it. You have just seen a woman become the most powerful person in a room full of her social superiors, all while claiming to be the most passive. It is a profound, unsettling, and brilliant paradox, and it is a lesson in power that you will not soon forget. Section 11. To cleanse the palate after the strange, shadowy world of the séance, your mother prescribes a large dose of bright, bustling commercial reality. A shopping trip. You are to visit one of the new temples of modern life, a grand department store that has recently opened on Regent Street. These vast, multi-storied palaces of commerce are a relatively new phenomenon, and for women of your class, they are a revelation. They are one of the few public spaces where a lady can move about freely unchaperoned without her reputation being called into question. You push through the heavy glass doors and enter a different kind of theatre. If the ballroom was a theatre of desire, this is a theatre of acquisition. The air hums with a controlled, prosperous energy. It smells of new leather from the handbag department, of perfume from the cosmetics counter, and the clean, starchy scent of bolts of linen and cotton. A network of pneumatic tubes and cash railways whizzes overhead, carrying money and receipts to and from a central office in a series of satisfying thunks and whooshes. The space is vast and open, rising several stories to a glass atrium that floods the ground floor with natural light. Everywhere you look, goods are displayed in tantalizing abundance: fans from Spain, silks from China, gloves from France, all piled on gleaming mahogany counters. Your mother is in search of new lace for a dress, but you find yourself drawn to the glove counter. And it is there that your attention is captured, not by the merchandise, but by the young woman standing behind it. She is about your age, perhaps a year or two younger. Her hair is pulled back in a severe practical bun. Her dress is a simple uniform black, relieved only by a stiff white collar and cuffs. She is pale, and though her expression is one of polite attentiveness, you can see the deep weariness in her eyes. She is a shop girl. As she approaches to serve you, you observe her more closely. Her posture is ramrod straight, but it is not the elegant, cultivated straightness your corset imposes on you. It is the rigid posture of someone who is forbidden to lean, who has been standing in one place for hours and will continue to do so for many more. This is a central mainstream historical fact of her existence. The rise of the department store in the late Victorian era created a huge new workforce of young women, and while the job was considered more respectable than domestic service or factory work, the conditions were brutal. A 12-hour day was standard 6 days a week, almost all of it spent on their feet. The physical toll, particularly on their legs, feet and backs, was immense. Her polite, ever-ready smile feels achingly familiar. It's the universal mask of anyone in the service industry, a mask you realize you often wear yourself, though for very different reasons. "May I help you, ma'am?" she asks, her voice quiet and inflectionless. "I should like to see your kid-skin gloves," you say, and you begin the familiar ritual. She takes out a measuring tape to find your size, her fingers quick and impersonal. As she works, you find yourself imagining her life, trying to piece it together from the details you see. Her cage is not like yours. Your cage is gilded, padded with silk and velvet, its bars forged from etiquette and expectation. Her cage is made of iron necessity. She does not have a quiet private room to retreat to. She almost certainly lives sleeping in a sparse shared dormitory on an upper floor of the store, her life governed by the ringing of bells and the strict rules of a live-in matron. Her time is not her own. She rises before the store opens and goes to bed long after it closes, her waking hours entirely beholden to her employer. You think of your corset, the whalebone and steel device you consider an instrument of confinement. She is likely wearing one too, but hers is not a fashionable item designed to create an elegant silhouette. It is a cheap, brutally stiff garment worn not for looks, but for support, a necessary evil to endure the endless hours of standing without collapsing. You long for intellectual stimulation, for the freedom to express your thoughts and passions. What does she long for? The answer is likely far more immediate and tangible. She probably longs for the bell that signals the end of her shift. She longs for a hot meal that isn't the bland, starchy fare served in the staff canteen. She longs for the simple, profound luxury of being able to sit down. This brings to mind a particularly grim and quirky tidbit about her world, the system of fines. Many department stores controlled their employees with a punitive set of rules. A girl could have a portion of her already meager wages docked for the smallest infraction, a button undone on her uniform, a hair out of place whispering to another girl, or worst of all, leaning against the counter to relieve her aching back. It was a system designed to enforce a machine-like perfection, and it meant that a girl could work a 70-hour week and still end up in debt to the company that employed her. If your mother's household rules about posture and polite conversation came with monetary fines, you'd be utterly penniless. "These should be the correct size, ma'am," the shop girl says, sliding a pale grey glove onto your hand. Her touch is professional, her movements efficient. For a moment your eyes meet. In that brief, silent exchange, a world of difference is acknowledged. She sees you a lady of leisure, a creature from another world able to buy in a moment an object that costs more than a week of her wages. And you, for the first time, truly see her not as a functional part of the store's machinery, but as a young woman like yourself, her life defined by a set of constraints so much harsher and more absolute than your own. Historians debate the extent to which the shop girl was a figure of tragedy exploited by a harsh capitalist system, or a figure of modernity, a new woman with unprecedented economic independence and social mobility. Looking at the girl before you, it seems an impossible question. She has a wage, a life in the city away from her family. This is a form of freedom. But the price of that freedom is a life of near total servitude and physical exhaustion. The transaction is complete. Your mother pays, and the girl wraps your new gloves in tissue paper with practiced speed. You murmur your thanks and turn to leave. But the image of her pale, tired face stays with you as you move through the bustling, luxurious store. You have spent your life chafing against the bars of your gilded cage, writing of your longing for freedom in your diary. But this brief encounter has shown you that there are other cages and other more desperate kinds of longing. The realization does not diminish your own frustrations, but it places them in a new, uncomfortable, and deeply humbling perspective. At least you think with a flash of dark humor, your list of duties doesn't require you to be nice to absolutely everyone you meet. There is, it seems, a silver lining to every cage. The encounter at the department store leaves a strange residue in your thoughts. The image of the shop girl's pale, tired face haunts you. It has complicated your own narrative of suffering. Your frustrations with your life are real, yet they are set against a backdrop of immense privilege you had never truly considered. The slow, formal courtship with Mr. Davies, which once felt like the central drama of your existence, now seems like a parlor game, frivolous and distant. You feel a deep, urgent need for a conversation that is not a performance, for a connection that is not governed by the intricate, unwritten rules of society. You need to speak to Clara. Clara is your dearest friend, the person in the world who knows the girl beneath the layers of silk and whalebone. You send a note, and an afternoon visit is arranged. When you arrive at her house, the familiar comfort of her presence is like a balm. With her, you do not have to be the perfect daughter, the prospective wife, the charming young lady. You can just be. You retreat to her private sitting room, a cozy, sunlit space filled with her books, her watercolor paintings, and the comfortable clutter of her life. Here, in this feminine sanctuary, the armor you both wear begins to loosen. You sink into a plush armchair, and she curls up on a settee opposite you, and you talk. You tell her about the suffocating weight of expectation you felt since your return from Italy. You tell her about the maddeningly slow dance of Mr. Davies's courtship. And you tell her about the girl behind the glove counter trying to articulate the strange mix of pity, guilt, and connection you felt. Clara listens, her gaze full of a profound, unwavering sympathy. This is the nature of your friendship. It is the central, most sustaining emotional relationship of your life. In a world where your interactions with men are scripted and supervised, your bonds with women are where you find true intimacy. It's a mainstream historical fact that in the 19th century, with its strict gender segregation, intense, passionate, and physically affectionate friendships between women were not only common, but celebrated. They were known as romantic friendships, and they were considered the purest form of love, a haven of emotional and spiritual understanding. You reach out and take her hand, and she threads her fingers through yours without a moment's hesitation. This physical affection is as natural as breathing. You might rest your head on her shoulder as you read from the same book, or even share a bed when you stay the night, all without a hint of social impropriety. The modern world sometimes struggles with this kind of deep, platonic intimacy, always wanting to label it, to question it. But in your world, this love is a given. It is the fertile ground in which your emotional life is allowed to grow. When you are apart, you write to each other constantly. The letters you exchange are filled with a passionate, effusive language that would make a suitor's formal compliments seem pale and lifeless. You still have the last one she sent you tucked away with your most treasured belongings. My dearest heart. It began. Another day has passed in this dreary city, made tolerable only by the thought of your face. I languish without your company and count the hours until I might see you again. The world is a shade of grey when you are not in it. This is not seen as strange or scandalous. It is the accepted language of female devotion, a love that is considered safe because it is seen as inherently non-sexual and spiritual. Your letters to Clara are without a doubt the most honest and passionate love letters you have ever written. This kind of deep bond between women sometimes took on a more formal, permanent structure. A quirky tidbit that emerged later in your century is the phenomenon known as a Boston marriage. This was a term used to describe two single women, often educated and financially independent, who would choose to live together for their entire lives, cohabiting in a committed marriage-like relationship. They created a shared domestic and intellectual life that completely bypassed the need for a husband. It was a radical, quiet, and surprisingly common way for women to build a life on their own terms. As you sit with Clara, her thumb stroking the back of your hand, you feel the depth of this connection. It is a profound and nourishing love. It is the bedrock of your emotional stability. But what precisely is it? The question hangs in the unspoken space between you. The words you have to describe love are all tied to the world of courtship and marriage of men and women. There is no accepted vocabulary for the specific powerful current that flows between you and Clara. Society sanctions this intensity, this physical closeness, precisely because it cannot conceive of it as a threat to the established order. It is permissible because it is in their eyes unimaginable. Historians vigorously debate the nature of these romantic friendships. Were they largely platonic, albeit emotionally overwrought relationships that served as a rehearsal for heterosexual marriage? Or were many of them functionally lesbian relationships with a physical and erotic component that has been erased from the historical record? The truth is, these are modern categories imposed on a past that saw the world differently. For you sitting in this sunlit room, the relationship is simply essential. It exists in a space of beautiful unspoken ambiguity. Clara squeezes your hand. "The world is a complicated place," she says softly, understanding everything you've told her and everything you haven't. But you are not alone in it. In her company, the weight on your shoulders feels lighter. The confusion in your mind feels clearer. This friendship is your refuge. It is the place you come to be refortified, to be reminded of the person you are when the performance stops. This love, which dares not speak its name, not because it is forbidden, but because it has no name, is the truest and most reliable solace you have ever known. It is a quiet, powerful rebellion against a world that expects your most profound attachments to be with a man you barely know. And as the afternoon light fades, you feel a sense of peace settle over you, a quiet strength drawn from this unbreakable, unnameable bond. Strengthened by the quiet solidarity of your friendship with Clara, you feel better equipped to face the world again. The next event on the social calendar is a musicale, an afternoon of polite chamber music, and even more polite conversation at the home of a family you wish to cultivate. More importantly, you have received intelligence via the ever-efficient grapevine of your mother's social circle that Mr. Davies is expected to attend. The performance, therefore, must be flawless. This begins, as it always does, in front of your wardrobe. You and Mary, your maid, stand before the large, dark wood armoire, contemplating its contents. In the modern world, a person might choose an outfit based on what they like, what feels comfortable, or what expresses their personality. For you, the process is far more strategic. Your attire is not a statement of self. It is a carefully constructed message to a specific audience. It is a vocabulary of silent signals and you must choose your words with the utmost care. What message do you wish to send to Mr. Davies and the assembled company today? Do you wish to appear as an innocent ingenue, a sophisticated woman of the world, an artistic soul who cares little for fashion? Each identity has its own uniform. You are not just getting dressed, you are putting on a costume for a very specific role. You consider a gown in a striking shade of green, a color made fashionable by the new aniline dyes. It would certainly make you stand above the crowd, but it might be too bold, too attention-seeking. It might signal a frivolous or forward nature. You dismiss it. Today's message must be one of sincerity, modesty, and thoughtful elegance. You decide on a dress of fine wool chalice in a soft, unassuming shade of cornflower blue. The color itself is a signal. White, of course, is the color of debutantes, a public declaration of innocence and virginal purity. Passionate reds are for married women, and even then they are worn with caution. But this gentle blue speaks of loyalty, serenity, and intellectual depth. It is a quiet color, a color that invites calm conversation rather than bold flirtation. It says, "I am a sensible and interesting person." All of this effort and analysis just to communicate a basic personality trait seems a bit excessive, but these are the rules of the game. The most complex sartorial language, of course, belongs to the state of mourning. This is a mainstream historical fact that governs the lives of almost everyone you know at some point. The rules of mourning dress are a rigid, unyielding tyranny. For a widow in deep mourning the first year and a day after her husband's death, her attire is a complete negation of self. She must wear solid black in non-reflective fabrics like bombazine and parramatta, with a heavy crepe veil hiding her face from the world. As she moves into the later stages of half-mourning, she can slowly reintroduce shades of grey mauve and lavender, signalling her gradual return to society. The system is so complex that ladies' magazines publish detailed charts and timelines lest a woman commit the social sin of wearing silk too soon. It is a walking, visible timetable of grief. Your dress chosen you now, turn to the accessories. If the gown is the basic sentence, these are the adjectives and adverbs that give it nuance. You decide against the fashionable, glittering jet jewelry you own. Though beautiful, it is too closely associated with mourning and might strike a somber note. Instead, you choose a small, delicately carved cameo brooch to wear at your throat. The classical profile on the brooch signals your good taste, your education, and your quiet virtue. You consider your hair. A cascade of elaborate curls might seem too vain. Instead, you ask Mary to style it in a simple, elegant chignon adorned with a single, carefully placed silk ribbon that matches the blue of your dress. The ribbon is a small, soft detail, a whisper of femininity rather than a shout. It is a tiny, perfect punctuation mark. It's a bit amazing how much thought has to go into something that will likely just be covered by a bonnet the moment you step outside. This leads to a quirky and slightly more obscure aspect of female adornment, the chatelaine. This was a decorative clasp worn at the waist from which a series of chains were suspended, carrying various useful or ornamental items. A practical woman might carry keys, a thimble, and a small pair of scissors. But a more fashionable lady's chatelaine was a glittering display of often useless tiny objects, a miniature perfume bottle, a vinaigrette for smelling salts, a silver stamp case, and perhaps a livre de bal, a tiny ornate notebook, far more elaborate than a simple dance card. In this little book, a lady could jot down a line of poetry, a clever remark she overheard, or even a flirtatious note. It was a diary, worn on the outside, a hint of a rich inner life made into a public accessory. Finally, you are ready. As you enter the musicale, the room is a rustling, murmuring sea of carefully chosen signals. You are not just seeing people, you are reading them. You see Miss Albright, whose father is a prominent banker in a gown of expensive Lyons silk, its fashionable bustle announcing her family's wealth and her commitment to being at the height of style. You see a young widow in the pale transitional shades of lilac and grey, her half-mourning attire subtly signalling that she is once again available on the marriage market. The room is having 1,000 silent conversations before a single word of greeting is spoken. Fashion historians debate whether this complex language of dress was an empowering tool that gave women a form of agency and self-expression, or if it was simply another layer of social control, forcing them to conform to an incredibly demanding and expensive set of expectations. Standing in this room, feeling the weight of the social calculus behind every outfit, you suspect it is both. Your choices were limited, but within those limits, you have crafted a message, and that is a form of power. Mr. Davies turns from a conversation as you enter. His eyes find you, and you see a flicker of something appreciation, perhaps even relief. You have not presented him with a dazzling, intimidating fashion plate, but with a vision of calm, approachable elegance. Your message has been received and understood. He makes his way toward you, his smile warm and genuine. And you feel the quiet, profound satisfaction of a skilled translator who has just successfully conveyed a difficult and nuanced idea without speaking a single word. The musicale is a quiet success. Your conversation with Mr. Davies is everything you had hoped for, a comfortable, intelligent exchange that hints at a deeper compatibility. A warm, optimistic feeling settles over you. For once, the slow, carefully modulated pace of society feels right, like a beautiful piece of music unfolding according to a complex but satisfying score. But then you notice a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. The gentle hum of polite conversation is punctuated by sharp, excited whispers. You see groups of 2 or 3 women, their heads close together, their fans working furiously, not to cool themselves but to shield their mouths. Their eyes are wide with a mixture of shock pity and a kind of thrilling, vicarious excitement. A name is being passed from group to group, like a contagion. Eleanor Vance. You know of her. She is a pretty vivacious girl, a year or 2 older than you, from a respectable family. You have never been close, but you have admired her confidence, the easy way she laughs. Now, her name is being spoken with a tone reserved for disaster and disgrace. The whispers are disjointed, but you catch the key words: the conservatory, Captain Albright, seen by a servant, and the most damning of all, utterly ruined. A piece of social dynamite has been detonated, and the shockwave is tearing through the polite facade of the afternoon. The music still plays, the tea is still being poured, but the real event is this invisible, unfolding tragedy. The full story comes later in the hushed, confidential atmosphere of the carriage ride home. Your mother, having gathered the details, relates them to you not as gossip, but as a grave and necessary lesson. A terrible, terrible business. She begins, her voice low. Eleanor Vance has destroyed herself. The destruction was not, by the standards of a future age, a dramatic event. There was no elopement, no pregnancy. There was only a moment of reckless, unchaperoned passion. She and a handsome, roguish army captain had slipped away from a crowded party and into the glass conservatory. There, hidden among the ferns and orchids, they were seen exchanging a passionate kiss. That was all, a stolen kiss, an embrace that lasted perhaps 30 seconds. But a servant saw, and the servant told another servant, and by the next morning, the story was all over town. In your world, this is not a minor indiscretion. It is a catastrophe. It's a mainstream historical fact that an unmarried woman's entire future rested upon a single fragile commodity, her reputation. Under the prevailing legal and social codes, a respectable woman was considered the property of her father until she became the property of her husband. Her value in this transaction was determined by her family's status, her dowry, and her unimpeachable virtue. To lose her reputation for chastity or even for modesty and discretion was to lose everything. The speed and savagery with which a reputation could be destroyed is not unlike a modern online shaming, where a single misstep can unleash a torrent of public condemnation that follows you forever. The consequences for Eleanor Vance are swift and absolute. She is now a fallen woman. The invitations she had for the rest of the social season are rescinded with polite, flimsy excuses. When her mother attempts to pay social calls, she is informed that the ladies of the house are not at home. The friends who once flocked to her side now turn away if they see her in the street. She is a ghost erased from the guest lists and the daily life of the society she was born into. Her future is a blank wall. No man from a respectable family will marry her now. To do so would be to bring her disgrace upon himself and his children. Her family is mortified, their own social standing tarnished by her actions. And the man Captain Albright, your mother tells you, has been roundly condemned for his caddish behaviour. His commanding officer has given him a stern lecture. It is rumoured he will be conveniently reassigned to a distant, dusty post in India to let the scandal die down. For him, it is an embarrassing episode, a temporary setback. For Eleanor, it is a life sentence. The double standard is not a subtle hypocrisy. It is a foundational pillar of your world. What will happen to her? She will likely be sent away to live with a poor relation in a remote part of the country to live out her days in quiet, obscure shame. That is the best she can hope for. For other women in her position, the fate could be much worse. This brings to mind the grim, quirky tidbit about the vast network of institutions built to handle such problems, the Magdalene asylums. These were, in essence, penal laundries often run by religious orders. Fallen women, a category that included everyone from prostitutes to unmarried mothers to girls like Eleanor, could be sent there to perform endless, grueling work, washing the laundry of the public, to cleanse their souls through hard labor and penance. The idea of a lifetime of scrubbing other people's linens as punishment for a single kiss is a joke too dark to even contemplate. The story chills you to the bone. You think of the waltz with Mr. Davies, the electric feel of his hand on your waist. You think of the intense, unspoken feelings you pour into your diary. You think of the longing for a life of passion and meaning that you have secretly nurtured. Now you see with a terrifying new clarity the precipice you have been unconsciously walking along. The desires that feel so private, so essential to who you are seen by the world as a dangerous madness, a fire that must be kept banked and under constant watch. If it ever escapes, it will consume you entirely. Historians debate the actual prevalence of female ruin. Was it a widespread social reality, or was it a powerful but relatively rare cautionary tale amplified by sensationalist literature and moral panics to enforce social control on all women? Sitting in the dark of the carriage, the story of Eleanor Vance feels utterly terrifyingly real. It is a public execution of a reputation designed to serve as a warning to everyone else. You look at the life stretching before you, the slow, proper courtship, the endless rules of etiquette, the constant performance of demure respectability. And for the first time, you see it not just as a cage, but as a kind of protection. The rules you find so frustrating are also a high wall saving you from the brutal, unforgiving wilderness on the other side. The The story of the stolen kiss and the ruined life has taught you the most important lesson of all, that for a woman in your world, the most dangerous thing you can possess is a desire you cannot control. The shadow of Eleanor Vance's social ruin hangs over the following weeks. You find yourself more cautious, more watchful, more acutely aware of the 1,000 invisible tripwires that surround a woman of your class. Your interactions with Mr. Davies are models of propriety. You discuss art, literature, and the weather with a formal grace that feels both safe and suffocating. The memory of the stolen kiss and its catastrophic consequences has become a silent third chaperone in all your encounters. Desire, you have learned, is a dangerous fire, and you are determined to keep it safely behind a well-guarded grate. One bright, crisp afternoon, you are taking a constitutionally mandated walk in Hyde Park with your mother. It is the very picture of orderly, civilized life. Nannies in starched white aprons push enormous, elaborate perambulators. Well-dressed families stroll along the manicured paths. Gentlemen in top hats tip them to ladies who incline their heads in response. It is a slow, elegant, and predictable parade. You are a part of it. Your pace measured, your gloved hands clasped before you, your expression one of placid contentment. And then the parade is disrupted. It happens in a flash. There is a whirring sound, the glint of sunlight on spinning metal spokes, and a figure zips past you on the path. It is a woman on a bicycle. The sight is so unexpected, so utterly alien to the sedate landscape of the park, that you stop dead. She is everything this scene is not. She is speed. She is motion. She is exertion. She is not wearing the cumbersome layers of skirts and petticoats that you and every other woman in the park are wearing. She is dressed in what they call a rational costume. A practical shorter skirt that falls just below the knee, worn over a pair of full baggy trousers gathered at the ankle. They are known controversially as bloomers. Her jacket is tailored and sensible. Her hat is small and pinned securely to her simply styled hair. Her face is flushed with the wind and the effort of pedaling, and on her face is an expression you can only describe as exhilaration. She is alone, unchaperoned, and moving under her own power at a speed you can barely comprehend. Good heavens! Your mother mutters, her voice tight with disapproval. The sheer audacity! Other strollers stop and stare, their faces a mixture of astonishment, amusement, and outright outrage. The woman on the bicycle, however, seems entirely oblivious to the stir she is causing. She is in a world of her own, a world of momentum and freedom. This is not just a woman on a bicycle, this is a sign of the times. It's a mainstream historical fact that the invention of the modern safety bicycle in the late 1880s had a revolutionary effect on society and on women's lives in particular. For the first time, a woman had access to a relatively inexpensive and independent mode of transport. She could leave her home, travel for miles, and explore the world beyond her immediate neighborhood without needing a horse, a carriage, or a male escort. The bicycle was a literal and metaphorical vehicle for female emancipation. This cyclist is the living embodiment of a new and terrifying idea, the new woman. You have read about her mostly in satirical cartoons in Punch magazine, where she is depicted as a gawky, mannish creature who smokes cigarettes, neglects her children, and bullies her husband. She is a figure of ridicule, a boogeyman created to mock the idea of female independence. But the woman who just flew past you was not a caricature. She was vibrantly, unapologetically alive. The new woman is a threat to everything your world holds dear. She is educated, having perhaps attended one of the new women's colleges at Oxford or Cambridge. She might have a profession working as a typist, a journalist, or a teacher. She is politically aware, probably agitating for the right to vote. She believes in her right to an existence that is not defined solely by her relationship to a man. She is, in short, the antithesis of the angel in the house, that perfect passive domestic creature you have been raised to be. The backlash against her and her chosen vehicle has been ferocious. A truly quirky and revealing tidbit is the medical panic that erupted over women and cycling. Respected doctors wrote grave articles in medical journals warning of the dire health consequences. They claimed the physical strain of pedaling would damage a woman's delicate reproductive system. They argued that the constant friction from the bicycle saddle was morally dangerous, capable of producing improper feelings and a precocious depravity. One doctor even coined the term bicycle face, a permanent condition of being wild-eyed and grim-jawed, brought on by the stress of navigating traffic and keeping one's balance. If a simple bicycle seat could cause all that moral chaos, you think the world would be a very different and probably much more interesting place. You watch until the cyclist is just a small dot disappearing down the path. The image is burned into your mind. She is a vision from another possible world. For your entire life, you have been presented with two options: successful conformity like your mother, or social ruin like Eleanor Vance. The idea of a third path, one of self-defined freedom, had never occurred to you as a real possibility. It was something you read about in sensation novels, but not something you saw on a Tuesday afternoon in Hyde Park. Social historians debate whether the new woman was a genuine widespread social movement that paved the way for modern feminism, or a media-driven stereotype that represented the fears and anxieties of a society confronting rapid change, with most women's lives remaining largely untouched. But for you in this moment, she is not a stereotype. She is a revelation. She is a question. You resume your slow, ladylike stroll, but the pace now feels confining, almost ridiculous. You are moving at a snail's pace in a world where it is suddenly possible to fly. The story of Eleanor Vance taught you the dangers of desire. But this woman on the bicycle has just taught you that there are different kinds of desire. Not just the longing for a stolen kiss in a conservatory, but the longing for the wind in your face, for the power of your own muscles carrying you forward for a life lived in motion. A new radical and far more dangerous seed has just been planted in the quiet garden of your mind. Section 16. The woman on the bicycle has broken something in your mind. The placid surface of your world has a crack in it, and you find yourself peering through, trying to see what lies on the other side. The vague restlessness you've always felt now has a shape. It is the shape of a woman in motion, pedaling furiously toward a future you can't yet see. Your diary entries begin to change. The romantic musings on Mr. Davies are now interspersed with sharper, more analytical questions. Why must we walk so slowly? Why are our clothes so heavy? Who made these rules? You start to search discreetly for answers. You scan the newspapers and magazines that come into the house, looking past the society pages and serialized novels. And one day you find it, tucked away in a corner of a progressive journal your father subscribes to, is an article dripping with sarcasm and condescension about a group of radical women and their bizarre ideas. The article is meant to mock them, but it gives you their name: the Rational Dress Society. Rational. The word itself is a revelation. It implies that the way you have been dressing your entire life is in fact irrational. You read the article in the privacy of your room, your heart beating with a new kind of excitement, not the thrill of a secret romance, but the thrill of a secret idea. The article quotes the society's central principles, intending to show how foolish they are, but to you they sound like a declaration of independence. This is a mainstream historical fact that resonates with your very bones. The Rational Dress Society, a real organization founded in the 1880s, campaigned for clothing that adhered to three simple revolutionary principles. The 3 F's, as they were known. First, freedom of movement. Clothing should not impede the body's ability to walk, run, stretch, or bend. Second, freedom from pressure on any vital organ. Clothing should not deform the skeleton or compress the internal organs. And third, fitness for the occasion. Clothing should be practical for the activity being performed. Reading these principles is like hearing a truth you have always known but never had the words to express. It's a bit like someone in the future discovering that wearing shoes made of concrete is not actually a great idea. The logic is inescapable once you hear it. The Society's members were not just fighting against the corset, they were waging a war on the entire architecture of Victorian female attire. They condemned the heavy skirts laden with braids and bustles which collected mud and filth from the streets and made walking an exhaustive effort. They railed against high, tight collars and sleeves so narrow a woman could barely raise her arms. They pointed out the absurdity of flammable fabrics and hats adorned with entire taxidermied birds. They argued with a scientific and medical fervor that women's fashion was a direct cause of their supposed physical frailty. It wasn't that women were inherently weak, it was that their clothes were literally disabling them. The battle against the corset, however, was the heart of the fight. It became a public, often vicious war of words and images. You start to notice the cartoons in magazines like Punch. The dress reformers are always depicted as ugly, scrawny, desperate spinsters with sour expressions and ill-fitting masculine clothes. They are shrieking sisters who have forgotten their feminine nature. The bloomer, the practical split skirt you saw on the cyclist, becomes the ultimate symbol of this perceived monstrosity and is mocked relentlessly. The subtext is clear. If you give up your corset, you give up your beauty, your desirability, your very identity as a woman. The cartoons suggest that removing your stays will inevitably cause you to grow a formidable moustache and lose all interest in flower arranging. The reformers fought back with their own powerful, if rather gruesome, propaganda. A quirky tidbit about the movement is the shock tactics they employed. Some of the more zealous anti-corset crusaders would travel with anatomical models often nicknamed Venus or Juno, which could be opened up to show the devastating internal effects of tight lacing. They would give public lectures pointing out the permanently deformed rib cages, the compressed lungs, and the grotesquely displaced livers of a corseted woman versus the natural state of a classical statue. It was a form of anatomical horror show designed to scare women into unlacing for good. You are caught in the crossfire of this public battle, and it creates a profound internal conflict. You read the arguments of the Rational Dress Society, and they feel like pure, unadulterated common sense. You feel the truth of their words in the permanent red marks the stays leave on your skin, in the shallow breaths you take, in the way you must descend a staircase sideways. Yet you see the social reality around you. To adopt any form of rational dress would be to brand yourself as a radical, an eccentric, an unwomanly creature. It would be to commit a kind of social suicide. What would your mother say? What would Mr. Davies think a man who has only ever known you as a figure of fashionable elegance? Historians debate the overall effectiveness of the organized dress reform movements. Did they successfully change mainstream fashion, or were they a fringe intellectual movement whose ideas were only adopted once technology like the bicycle and broader social changes made them a practical necessity? For you, the debate is not academic. It is deeply personal. Are you brave enough to trade your social standing for the freedom to take a deep breath? The answer for now is no. The risk is too great. but the knowledge has changed you. When you look in the mirror now, you don't just see your own reflection. You see a woman encased in a tradition that is being actively, intelligently, and passionately questioned. Your corset is no longer just a piece of your daily routine. It has become a symbol. It is the visible manifestation of a system of beliefs you are no longer sure you share. And for the first time in your life, you allow yourself to imagine what it might feel like to one day simply refuse to put it on. The idea is terrifying. But the thought of freedom of movement, while probably disastrous for the expensive vase in your mother's drawing room, sounds like the most beautiful poetry you have ever heard. The ideas of the rational dress society have lit a small, steady fire in your mind. It is a fire of indignation, of intellectual awakening, and it needs fuel, it needs an outlet. But there is nowhere for it to go. You cannot join their societies or speak of these things in public. To do so would be to invite ridicule and ruin. Your diary is one outlet, but the words on the page feel inadequate to contain the new complex tapestry of your thoughts. You feel a familiar, restless energy building inside you, the same kind that preceded your hysteria. But this time you know its source. It is the friction between the world you are forced to inhabit and the world you are beginning to imagine. You need a new language, a new way to speak, and you find it in a place you least expect: your watercolor box. For years, painting has been one of your designated accomplishments, a genteel hobby meant to cultivate your refinement and fill the long, empty hours of the afternoon. You were taught by a governess to produce pleasant, respectable little pictures, a vase of flowers, a fruit bowl, a pretty, unthreatening landscape copied from a print. It was a sterile, technical exercise in imitation. You put it aside for a time, but now you find yourself drawn back to the familiar smell of the gum arabic in the paints, the satisfying drag of a wet brush on thick, textured paper. But something has changed. Your eye has changed. You no longer want to paint a perfect blushing rose. Instead, you find yourself compelled to paint the rose after it has been cut lying on a tabletop, its petals beginning to wilt. You are no longer interested in the sweeping, picturesque landscape. You are interested in the view from your own window, the way the iron fence of the garden below cuts the world into neat vertical strips. Your subject matter has moved indoors. You begin to paint the spaces you inhabit, the rooms that form the geography of your life. At first, your family is pleased. "What a charming domestic scene," your mother says, looking at your painting of a sunbeam slanting across the drawing room floor. She doesn't see what you see. She doesn't see that you have focused on the way the light illuminates the dust motes dancing in the air, a beautiful but fleeting moment of life in a room that is otherwise still and silent. She doesn't see that the sunlight itself is trapped, unable to reach the dark, shadowed corners of the room. This focus on the domestic sphere is common among the few women who manage to become serious artists. It's a mainstream historical fact that while the great art academies and the prestigious genre of historical painting were largely the domain of men, many female artists carved out a space for themselves by focusing on the world available to them, the world of interiors of women and children, of the quiet moments of daily life. Artists like Berthe Morisot would later use the techniques of Impressionism to capture the psychological nuances of this separate sphere, finding profound meaning and beauty in a world that men often dismissed as trivial. Your art becomes your secret diary, a canvas confidant. The symbols you use are quiet, subtle, and legible only to you. You paint a still life of the objects on your mantelpiece. To your mother, it is a display of your technical skill in rendering porcelain and polished wood. To you, it is a coded message. The beautiful porcelain vase with its impossibly narrow neck is you. The ticking clock beside it is the relentless, oppressive passage of time in a life spent waiting. The single perfect key lying tantalizingly close to a locked box is the freedom you cannot grasp. It's a bit like your own personal set of emojis, where a painted teacup can mean "I feel fragile today," and a closed book means "my mind is being starved." This channeling of creativity into intricate domestic forms was a hallmark of your era. A fascinating and quirky tidbit is the art of hair work. Throughout the century, women would practice the incredibly painstaking craft of weaving human hair from a loved one living or deceased into intricate pictures, wreaths, and even jewelry like rings and brooches. On the surface, it was a sentimental craft of remembrance. But it was also a deeply intimate, slightly macabre and highly skilled art form, a way of weaving stories and connections into a physical object created from the very stuff of the body itself. It was a way of making art out of the materials at hand, a testament to a creative impulse that would flourish even in the most constrained of environments. One day, you begin your most challenging painting yet. It is a self-portrait. You set up a mirror in the corner of the drawing room. You pose yourself exactly as you are meant to be seen, seated upright in a high-backed chair, your hands folded demurely in your lap, your silk dress arranged in perfect folds. You are the very picture of the angel in the house. But as you paint, you begin to tell the truth. You paint the room around you with a suffocating beauty. The pattern on the wallpaper, a swirling design of vines and birds, seems to creep and twist, becoming less a decoration and more of a beautiful, intricate net. Beside you on a small table is a gilded birdcage, a common decorative object. You paint its bars with a sharp metallic precision, making them seem hard and inescapable. You paint the little canary inside it, its head cocked, its beak open in a silent, unheard song. And then you paint your own face. You capture the likeness, the smooth skin, the correctly styled hair. But you labor over the expression in your eyes. You try to capture the placid surface and the watchful, intelligent, and deeply melancholic soul behind it. The woman in your painting is not at peace. She is a prisoner in a beautiful room, a gilded cage. Your mother thinks your painting of the caged canary is a lovely touch, though she suggests the cage itself could be more decorative. She doesn't realize you have painted two prisoners in the scene. Art historians debate whether the focus on domestic scenes by 19th century female artists was a result of their exclusion from the more important public and historical subjects, or a deliberate artistic choice to explore the separate sphere of women's lives with a unique, insightful perspective. Looking at your own work, you know it is both. You paint this world because it is the only one you are allowed to depict. But you also paint it because you are an expert on its nuances, its silent tragedies, its hidden beauties. You hide the finished painting in your room, turning its face to the wall. It is too honest, too revealing to be shown. But creating it has been a release. You have taken your longing, your frustration, and your new political awareness, and you have transformed them into something tangible, something beautiful, something true. Your art is no longer an accomplishment. It is a confession. Time, which once seemed to move with the slow, deliberate pace of a glacier, suddenly accelerates. The courtship of Mr. Alistair Davies proceeds through its formal, well-charted stages and culminates, as it was always designed to, in a proposal of marriage. You accept. Your parents are delighted. His parents are satisfied. The match is a good one, a sensible merging of two respectable families. Your wedding is a beautiful, solemn affair, and then you are no longer the girl you were. You are a wife. You are Mrs. Davies. You have a new house to manage, a set of keys for your own front door, and a new social standing that affords you a greater degree of respect. But you discover quickly that you have not stepped into freedom. You have simply been transferred from one gilded cage to another. The bars are a little wider, the furnishings more to your own taste, but it is a cage nonetheless. Your husband Alistair is a kind and decent man, but he is a man of his time. He expects a well-run, peaceful home, an elegant hostess for his dinner parties, and a serene, supportive presence at his side. And now that you are married, he and the entire world expects you to fulfill your ultimate sacred biological destiny. You must become a mother. This is the final and most important role you must play, the one that is seen as the very definition of your womanhood. You are to become the angel in the house. This phrase, which comes from a wildly popular poem of the day by Coventry Patmore, has become a kind of cultural shorthand for the ideal woman. And it is a mainstream historical fact that this ideal exerted a powerful hold on the Victorian imagination. The angel in the house is perfectly selfless, endlessly patient, and radiantly pure. Her sole ambition is to create a domestic heaven for her husband and children. She soothes his brow when he returns from the harsh, competitive world of commerce. She guides her children with a gentle moral hand. She has no desires of her own, no selfish thoughts, no identity separate from her family. She is a living embodiment of domestic piety. It's the 19th century version of the modern pressure to be a supermom, the woman who does it all perfectly and makes it look effortless, all while maintaining a beatific smile. Frankly, being a flawless, ethereal angel sounds both exhausting and incredibly boring. You become pregnant within the first year of your marriage. The news is met with joyful approval from both families. Your condition is not spoken of directly in mixed company. It is referred to in euphemisms like being in a delicate condition or expecting a happy event. Your world shrinks once more. You stop paying social calls and withdraw into the quiet waiting world of your home. The months pass in a slow, strange haze of physical discomfort and a quiet building dread. Childbirth in your era is not the sanitized, medicalized event it will become. It is women's business, a raw and dangerous ordeal that takes place in your own bedroom, attended by a midwife and female relatives. The shadow of death hangs over every birth. You have known friends and cousins who have died from infection, from hemorrhage, from exhaustion. As your time approaches, you are filled with a terror that you must conceal beneath a veneer of calm, womanly courage. The birth itself is a long, grueling battle, a blur of pain and fear. But you survive, and you have produced a healthy, squalling baby boy, a son, an heir. You have done your duty in the most profound and successful way imaginable. Your husband is overjoyed, your family is triumphant. As you lie in bed, weak and spent, a parade of visitors comes to congratulate you and admire the baby in his cradle. They all tell you how happy you must be, what a sacred joy you must be feeling. You smile weakly and nod because it is what you are supposed to do. But inside you feel a terrifying emptiness. The great transformative, transcendent love you were promised has not arrived. When you look at the tiny, red-faced infant, you do not feel a rush of maternal adoration. You feel a profound and baffling sense of detachment, as if he is a stranger who has invaded your life. A deep, heavy melancholy, far worse than the hysteria of your youth, descends on you like a fog. This is the great, unspoken sickness of motherhood for so many women of your time. We would now call it postpartum depression, but you have no name for it. It is simply a moral failing, a sign of your unnatural and ungrateful character. Your husband thinks you are just tired. Your mother tells you to be strong and think of the baby. A quirky, and in this case tragic aspect of medical history is that while Queen Victoria herself famously used the new anesthetic chloroform to alleviate the pain of childbirth, the emotional and psychological aftermath was almost completely ignored. The Queen's endorsement of chloroform was controversial. Some clergymen argued that God had intended for women to suffer in childbirth as Eve's punishment, but it at least acknowledged the physical agony. The silent, invisible agony that could follow was a different matter. Historians and medical scholars debate how 19th century society perceived and treated what we now know as postpartum depression, often conflating it with hysteria or neurasthenia and failing to recognize it as a distinct condition tied to childbirth. You are told you have a low mood or weak nerves. You are prescribed tonics and more rest. No one asks you about the loss of your own identity, the terror of your new responsibility, the crushing isolation of your role. You have reached the pinnacle of female achievement. You have a respectable husband, a fine house, and a healthy son. You are, by all external measures, a complete success, and you have never been more unhappy. The gilded cage has a new nursery, and its bars feel stronger and tighter than ever before. The angel in the house is weeping and no one can see her tears. You look at your son sleeping in his bassinet and think with a flash of dark, blasphemous humor that at least Eve probably got to take a walk in the garden by herself after the whole ordeal was over. Your walk, it seems, is over for good. Section 19. The years pass. This is a simple truth, but one that feels both gradual and shockingly sudden. The acute, tearing unhappiness of your early years of motherhood has softened with time, its sharp edges worn down into a dull, familiar ache of resignation. It has become a permanent part of your internal landscape, like a low-grade fever that never quite breaks. You are now a woman in your middle years. Your son, a boy with your husband's serious eyes, is no longer a demanding infant, but a creature with his own life, his own secrets. Your husband, Alistair, is a good man, a pillar of his community, but he has become more absorbed in his business, more settled in his ways. Your lives run on parallel, predictable tracks. You are the mistress of this beautiful, quiet house. You manage the servants, plan the menus, and arrange the flowers. You have achieved the serene, respectable maturity you were always destined for. And you are haunted. You are haunted not by spirits, but by echoes. The corridors of your own mind are filled with the ghosts of the young woman you once were and the other women you might have been. The echoes are physical first. Decades of wearing a corset have left an indelible mark on your body. You move with a certain stiffness. A deep breath is still a luxury you rarely afford yourself. Sometimes a dull pain settles in your lower back, a complaint you share with nearly every woman you know. This is the great unacknowledged irony that the dress reformers you once read about tried to expose. It's a mainstream historical fact that a lifetime of relying on the external support of a corset caused the deep muscles of the back and abdomen to atrophy. The result was that many middle-aged women found themselves physically unable to stand up straight without their stays. The device that was meant to train the figure ultimately crippled it, creating a permanent lifelong dependency. The cage has, in a sense, fused with your own skeleton. You also see the echoes in the faces of others. The world is changing, but slowly. At a recent gathering, you saw a young woman whose face was a mask of placid indifference, but whose fingers were restlessly pleating the fabric of her skirt, a tiny, frantic signal of a mind screaming with boredom or anxiety. You recognized the gesture. It was your own. The most persistent echoes, however, are in your own mind. A lifetime of restraint has forged habits of thought that are as rigid as whalebone, You have spent so long suppressing your own feelings, hiding your disappointments behind a polite smile, swallowing your frustrations, translating your passions into safe domestic pursuits that you sometimes no longer know what you truly feel. There is a permanent gauzy curtain between your inner self and the woman the world sees. And sometimes you fear the curtain is there even when you are alone. You think of the Victorian obsession with pseudosciences like phrenology, the belief that you could read a person's character and intelligence from the bumps on their skull. It was a quirky and wildly popular idea for a time. Men of science would earnestly palpate heads declaring one man a genius and another a born criminal based on the shape of their cranium. It seems absurd to you now, but you understand the impulse behind it, a desperate desire to believe that the inner self could be reliably read from the outer form. It was an obsession that could only exist in an era so dedicated to making sure the outer form was a complete and utter lie. You sometimes wonder what a phrenologist would have made of you. He would probably declare you a model of placid domesticity, never sensing the vast, unruly continent of longing and rebellion hidden just beneath the scalp. The ghosts of your past are your constant companions. Sometimes, when you see a child on a tricycle, the image of the woman on the bicycle flashes in your mind as vivid and startling as it was 20 years ago. The ghost of her freedom, the wind in her hair, mocks the slow, deliberate pace of your life. The ghost of Eleanor Vance and her terrible swift ruin is there too, a permanent cautionary tale that has guided your every step, ensuring you never strayed too far from the path of propriety. The passionate, loving words from Clara's letters echo reminders of a pure, intense emotional connection that has been diluted by the demands of marriage and motherhood. These memories have shaped you. They are the invisible architecture of your psyche, and they all contribute to the most persistent ghost of all, the ghost of the unlived life. You look at the self-portrait you painted all those years ago, the one you keep turned to the wall in a spare room. You see the girl with the watchful eyes and you feel a profound sense of mourning for her. What if she had been braver? What if she had found a way to pursue her art, to travel to join the Rational Dress Society to build a life of the mind? What if she had been born a generation later? Psychohistorians and literary scholars debate the extent to which we can diagnose historical figures with modern psychological conditions, questioning whether concepts like repression or midlife crisis are universal or culturally specific constructs. You do not have the words for what you feel, no tidy diagnosis for this chronic ache of the soul. All you know is that you are living with the consequences of 1,000 tiny surrenders, a life of desires deferred and ambitions swallowed. The longing is no longer the sharp, acute pain of youth. It is a chronic condition, a part of your very being, as familiar and constant as the pressure of your stays. You catch your reflection in the dark glass of the window as evening draws in. You see the face of a handsome, composed, middle-aged woman, the mistress of a fine home, a success. But if you look long enough, you can see the faint, shimmering outlines of the other women behind her, the passionate artist, the fearless cyclist, the devoted friend, the heartbroken girl. They are all there, echoing in the corridors of your mind. You've heard that serenity is the great gift of middle age, but you suspect it's mostly just being too tired to fight anymore. And in the quiet of the drawing room, you are not serene. You are just quiet. The world begins to hurry. You feel it first as a change in the sounds from the street outside your window. The familiar, rhythmic clopping of horses' hooves is now punctuated by a new, alarming sound, the sputtering, backfiring roar of the horseless carriage. These strange, noisy, fast-moving machines appear on the streets, terrifying the horses and filling the air with a strange chemical smell. The telephone is installed in your hall, a polished wooden box that can magically carry a person's voice across the city, a marvel that feels more like something from a séance than from a scientist's workshop. Your son is a young man now, and he comes home from university filled with ideas that are as new and unsettling as the motorcar. He talks about socialism, about psychoanalysis, about a playwright named Shaw who seems to delight in mocking every value your generation holds dear. He and his friends, young men and women alike, have a casual, confident way of speaking to each other that makes the coded, careful flirtations of your youth seem like a forgotten, ancient language. You are living in the twilight of your own era, and the dawn of a new one is arriving whether you are ready for it or not. And then in the first year of the new century, the old queen dies. She has been on the throne for your entire life, a permanent, immovable symbol of the age. Her passing feels like a great final sigh from the world you knew. Everything is changing now, and the change makes its way, as it always does, into your wardrobe. You see it in the fashion magazines and then on the streets. The rigid, upright hourglass figure is beginning to soften. A new corset, the S-bend, or health corset, has become fashionable, designed to be less constricting on the abdomen by throwing the hips back and the chest forward. It creates a strange new posture, but it is a concession, an admission that the old ways were too punishing. Then, from the daring fashion houses of Paris, come even more radical ideas. A designer named Paul Poiret introduces elegant, high-waisted gowns inspired by classical statues' dresses that flow loosely to the floor and do not require a cinched waist at all. He declares that he has freed the bust and shackled the legs. And while the new hobble skirts present their own mobility challenges, the great central pillar of Victorian fashion, the tiny corseted waist is beginning to crumble. This is a mainstream historical fact that you witness in real time, the slow, inevitable death of the silhouette that has defined and confined you for your entire life. You observe the young women of this new Edwardian age. They play tennis in the park, their arms bare, their movements energetic. They speak in public, marching in ever larger numbers for the right to vote, their banners held high. They are called suffragettes, and your mother's friends speak of them as if they are a horde of screeching, unnatural harpies. But you see in them the realized dream of the woman on the bicycle. They are not asking for permission, they are demanding their freedom. Their undergarments are different too. A quirky transitional fashion is the elaborate frilly corset cover puffed out with lace and ribbons to create the fashionable pigeon breast look. It is a last frothy gasp of feminine fussiness before the sleek, simple underpinnings of the next decade take over. One of your son's friends, a young woman named Beatrice, who is studying at university, comes to tea. She talks animatedly about her desire to be a doctor. She doesn't ask for your opinion on the matter. She states it as her intention. She is polite and respectful, but there is no apology in her, no deference. She seems to believe that her mind and her ambition are her own to do with as she pleases. It's honestly a little shocking the way these young people have opinions on everything. It must be lovely to have that much confidence. The day comes when you are dressing and you stand before your familiar, heavily boned corset. It has been your companion, your shield, and your jailer for more than 30 years. You look at it and you see a relic of a bygone age. It belongs in a museum next to suits of armor and other ancient instruments of confinement. On an impulse, you tell Mary to put it away. You unwrap a new garment you have purchased, a girdle made with panels of elastic, a much lighter, less formidable contraption. You put it on. It offers support, but it does not crush. It smooths your lines, but it does not fundamentally reshape you. You look at your reflection in the mirror. Your waist is not as tiny. Your posture is less rigid. You look natural. You look like yourself. And then you do something you have not been able to do properly since you were a girl lying in your bed in the morning. You take a full, deep, unimpeded breath. You feel your lungs expand all the way. You feel your belly rise. The feeling is so profound, so liberating, it makes you feel dizzy. You can bend over and touch your toes. You can tie your own shoes without a single strategic thought. It is a quiet, personal, and world-altering revolution. Historians debate the primary driver for the corset's demise. Was it the culmination of decades of feminist and health reformers campaigning, or was it simply the inevitable result of new technologies, new forms of leisure, and the practical demands of a world changed by war? For you, the answer is irrelevant. The cage door is finally open. You have spent a lifetime hiding your longing behind a wall of whalebone and steel. You used flowers and fans, you read forbidden novels, you found solace in secret friendships and poured your frustrations onto a canvas. You lived a rich, complex and hidden life, a universe of desire concealed behind the perfect, placid exterior of a Victorian lady. You have survived. And now, in the bright, clear air of a new century, you can finally breathe. And so our long journey through the gaslit corridors of the 19th century comes to a close. The story we've followed, the life we've imagined, was just one of millions each, with its own secret histories, its own quiet rebellions and silent surrenders. The world of strict rules and whispered desires has faded into the past, leaving behind only echoes in the books and pictures it left behind. As you get ready to drift off, just let the final images dissolve like old photographs fading in the sun. The rustle of a silk dress, the scent of coal smoke and rain, the quiet scratch of a pen in a locked diary, and that final sweet, deep breath of freedom. The struggle is over now. The performance has ended. All that is left is the quiet, the comfort, and the welcome peace of the coming sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.